Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome one, welcome all to SimSpeed TV for round 6 of V8SCOPS for 2024. And what a round it's going to be. We go to the streets of Detroit at the Belle Street Circuit. This place has shown some fantastic fighting, fantastic drama over the years since it was added to the iRacing service, and it's one of my favorite places to go for V8 racing. Looking forward to bringing you this show here on SimSpeed Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Kick. It's me, Reese Gardner, with Scott Rankin alongside me in the commentary box. Jay Kennedy behind the scenes, pushing all the buttons. Scott, Belle Isle is one of my favorite street circuits of all time, and I think it suits these cars perfectly.
Two thoughts on that. Number one, you're a madman. Number two, you're a very madman. Number three, street circuit racing. Who likes street circuit racing? Of course, all the V8 supercar fans love street circuit racing. In the sim, I'm not a big fan of street circuit racing. You can say it's probably the cars suit it, and I think the cars do actually really suit the circuit. The problem I have with that, though, is that this doesn't represent the best of street circuit racing. I want a few more curbs. We can really flight the cars over. Give me that Surfer's Paradise chicane down the back straightaway. That is some of the best racing, but I'll take what this offers, I guess.
Yeah, I'll certainly take it as well. I mean, you know, when we zoom on into the track, you'll see there's a few big points around this place where the curbs should be used and used quite well. The island in the Detroit River on the border between the United States and Canada to the south, where this circuit is, incidentally. Yeah, Belle Isle, basically 13 proper corners around here. The curbs at 1 and 2, well, they'll certainly send you wide if you use them a bit too much, but there's a lot of curb hopping to be had at turns 3 and 4, and the whole sequence through 7 all the way to turn 10.
Yeah, and a lot of 90-degree, typical street circuit tracks, right? We've got the turns at 1 and 2. They're not quite 90 degrees. They're a little bit more flowy. 3 and 4, much more like your generic street circuit style corners. 5 and 6, a little bit of a rise up and out of 6. That always catches people out. Watching a lot of the vets racing on Thursday night, we're seeing a lot of drivers get a lot of attitude as they come through turn 6. I think the biggest thing to think about at the moment, Reese, is that we've just come off the back of these guys learning the new damage model. Well, what's torture? Learning the new damage model, going to a street circuit. That's about as close as you're going to get.
Yeah, exactly. There's been quite a few V8 championships that have had to just give a couple of extra notes to the drivers, like, yes, there is a new damage model on the cars, and you're going to suffer quite a bit from hits that you'd otherwise have gotten away with on the old damage model. We saw that in action last round at Winton Motor Raceway. But I'm looking forward to the comings and goings around Belle Isle tonight. The walls are close at all times. There's plenty of runoff in a few places on the circuit, but absolutely none at others. We're going to jump into, oh yeah, and the exit of turn 2, I was going to point out, is going to be a huge point of contention, that huge bump on the exit. But the format for tonight, we of course are going for Split 2 first. The drivers that did not make it into the top 32 places in pre-qualifying through the week. We have a 30-lap single race here with a 60% fuel tank restriction and 1 compulsory pit stop. I always love CPS races, especially around street circuits. This will provide some lovely action.
Yeah, one of the unique things that you can expect when you come to a street circuit, right, is that safety car percentage all of a sudden comes up. What does that do to your strategy? It changes it quite significantly. Is the first safety car the right time to come down pit lane? A lot of drivers will be saying yes, a lot of drivers will be saying no. Vets the other night on Thursday night was 27-lap race. You could get your compulsory pit stop out as soon as that end of the first lap finished. You know, as soon as you were that pit stop window was open. Here, we're just a little bit beyond that, but you get a couple laps behind the safety car, that's almost enough. So compulsory pit stop window basically opens at the end of lap 1, I believe. You can't do it at the end of lap 1. I think it's got to be the end of lap 2. So that will be the target lap, I think, for a lot of guys. If I'm in the midfield or I'm towards the back end of the pack, think about the delta that comes from racing people as well. That's a big, big part of going racing here. As soon as you start fighting, there's nowhere to go, and you just get chalked up. There's the bumper to bumper to bumper, very similar to Winton, but bring the walls into play a lot more, right? We talked a lot at Winton about racing someone. You got to check them up. You got to force an error out of them. You got to force them to cover you, and that's how you get the move done. It's the style of racing, very similar, just bring those walls into play. So undercut territory is actually a lot higher, and the reason for that is not necessarily to do with tyre fall off, it's to do with battling.
Yeah, exactly. And unlike Winton, there's a few obvious places around here where you can make a pass, particularly into turn 3 and potentially coming down into turn 7 if you're brave enough. But we've seen plenty of controversy in the past relating to that. In Logitech G Pro Invitational, Jared Filsell versus Jake Burton last year. It was a massive crash there between those two coming off the back stretch. Just 7 minutes remaining in practice, so plenty of time to dissect the foibles of this racetrack, also the foibles of the pit lane too, as Tyler Blackburn goes to P1 in the practice session.
Yeah, really interesting to see Bruce Tannock back and in the action as well. And don't forget, it does come up from time to time whenever you're talking about it, but I think this is a really, really key aspect of this. One of the benefits that Bruce has got is that being a drift car driver, your level of car control... Whoa! Who was that just ahead of him? Your level of car control and the ability to get up close and be really, really right next to barriers has got to be quite high. The differences, though, let's talk sim versus real life. Well, the difference is in real life, he can really rotate that neck. He can pick up all of his points up and around the car. Depends on what he's got in the sim. If he's got triple monitors, what the radius of those triple monitors are. And one of the big things is, when you talk about setups, is the setups have all got differences. Now, car to car, there's differences, different kinds of... is that Brady Baldwin going for his line? No, it was Ty Delaney, my apologies. One of the big things about different sims is the radius of monitors. Now, cars, yeah, sure, you can have some extra blocking and whatnot out and around the corner. One of the things I've not been impressed by Bruce Tannock lately is his racecraft. I don't think he's raced really cleanly. I remember a really, really strong Bruce Tannock who was able to really take it to guys who were probably about 5 or 10 positions further down the road than what I've seen do lately. If he can get back to that, I think he's good. The other side of that coin, most of the racing I've seen him do is in fixed setup. I think Bruce likes a car that he can tinker with, and that really plays to his forte and what his strengths are. Remember, drift car drivers, dirt oval drivers, Brady Baldwin's a perfect example of that. They like a car that turns off those rear wheels.
Yeah, indeed they do. And I think, the nature of these cars is quite similar to, say, a drift car or a dirt sprint car, in that it's very loose, it's powerful. Throttle control is a major part of getting these things around a racetrack. So if you've got that kind of experience from drifting and dirt oval, you can translate that to these machines.
Yeah, but it's about balance. As soon as you start taking it away from those rear tyres, particularly, we talked a little bit about it at Winton. I think this is actually a little bit more critical in terms of the way that the tyres wear and the way that you point and shoot the car. We talked about 90-degree corners, right? So many of them around this track. What that means is pull the car up, point it, shoot it. and there's a lot of stop-start acceleration zones. So if you start going through those rear tyres, yeah, the car rotates really nicely on the mid-corner, but as soon as you go to get that throttle, you've got nothing there. Where's that going to punish you? The exit turn 2 is probably one of the biggest zones because you've got to be on throttle to rotate the car up and over that crest. You're going to be supremely weak. So the guys that have got a car that pulls up and turns really, really nicely, what you're going to find is they're going to be able to set up for the pass off of turn 2. Where they're going to struggle is probably rotating onto the back straight, whereas the guys who've got a car that rotates a little bit more well, they'll turn in really nicely at turn 2, but then they'll struggle over the hump, and then coming onto the back straight, it's again coming off of that corner. That's where they'll struggle. They may cover themselves off, though, through the staircase effectively.
Yeah, exactly. I think the way you attack the corner, in general, is going to define your success here. You've got some obvious markers for where your braking and turn-in are. There's a lot of features around this place you can use, but that was a problem for Chris Miller there coming out of turn 3. But yeah, you're right. I think if you've got a strong front end, you're going to be successful here, and looking after the rears is also a major factor.
Yeah, one of the things that I really, really like is look at all the information that I'm talking. I don't drive this car. I don't like this car. What I'm talking about is from an architecture standpoint. There are guys out there that could go, Scott, what you're talking is completely and utterly not what the way that our car rotates and we drive that car, and there's a lot in that. But driving style, ARB, something else to consider particularly is as we get further into the night, we actually get into top split as well. Something that's worthwhile keeping in the back of your mind is fuel balance, and the way that you're going to keep the car set up and primed for that. If you come early, this will actually matter for this sprint race here as well for the split 2 guys, a little bit less so than it will matter for the split 1 guys, with that extra pit stop and everything that's going on for those guys. But the key is if you come down at the end of lap 2, you're going to have a car that's very heavy, very full on fuel. You're going to start the race with that sort of a balance. What you're asking of the car is completely different. Let's say you go through to about, we've got 30 laps here through the midpoint of the race. You're going to be, down to about 45 litres worth of fuel that's left in that car. What does that do? Lightens up the rear end, a lot more weight over the front end. The car pivots really, really nicely. Got a lot of tyre wear. Then you pit. Let's add another 5 to 10 to 20 sort of litres. You're only getting back up to 60 to 65 litres in terms of your tank capacity. So what you're going to do with the bars and how you rotate the car, completely different. What the key drivers that really know their stuff are the guys that go, all right, I've got to set up that 7 and 8 on my bars. When I throw 65 litres as a starting point in these cars, that means that my bars then go up to a 9 and 11 or, an 8, 10, or all of a sudden the differential in your bars grows because of that weight differential.
Yeah, and the adjustments on the fly are a big part of driving these cars as well. As they burn off the fuel load, they're going to be adjusting the anti-roll bars, adjusting the brake bias, keeping an eye on how the tires are going as well. There's so much that goes into driving a V8. They seem like pretty simple cars from the outside, and they are, 5-litre V8, 600 plus horsepower, locked differential, and 1,500 kilograms of weight. You can make your own conclusions about how these cars drive just from looking at those numbers if you've never driven one. But the amount of onboard adjustments that you have, it really is amazing seeing which drivers can master that. The drivers at the very top of this series, they are adjusting stuff from corner to corner at times.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's the other side of things is, how many changes do you want to do throughout the lap? One of the difficulties I've got as a driver is, and it's probably part of the reason I'm no good at these cars, is I like to set and forget. I really like to get a car that I've just dialed it in, and that's how I want to drive the car. If I'm changing the bars once every 4 to 5 laps, that's okay. I'm confident with that. But if you have a look at the way Shane Van Gisbergen, whenever you see onboards from Shane Van Gisbergen, particularly around Bathurst, he's changing the bars every corner, right? He's tinkering with it. He reaches over, grabs a bar, shifts it, grabs a bar, shifts it, at least on this chassis. And there are guys out there that do that. And like you said, Reese, it's not us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm very much a set and forget driver as well. I have driven the previous generation of these cars on iRacing, and I got a bit of experience, a bit of an eye in as to how these things drive. But my track time in this generation of V8 very limited indeed. We can only speak to what we would like personally from a car and our limited experience. But we are here to explain those parts, and I think we have a pretty good grasp of it, but we're largely here to talk about the racing, which is going to absolutely go off here in Split 2. Just a few seconds left in the practice session now. We have a 30-lap race, as I said, coming up for you here. The grid set by pre-qualifying times. As the session ticks over, we'll be able to get that grid and see who will be starting from pole position, who can finish potentially in the top 3 and get those golden tickets to race in Split 1. James Chastaner for Banter Alliance Racing is on pole position, and he's going to be starting alongside the number 80 of Joshua Horton. That's a very interesting pair up there on the front row. David Kirby is going to start on the second row alongside Tyler Blackburn for JTIT Race on Oz Esports. And then rounding out the top 6, Michael Whiting and Justin McLean, Byron Pierce and Jamie Dyke in 7th and 8th, the 2 Mustangs there for Alpha Venturi and Fishy. And then we have Race on Oz and Fishy in the form of Benjamin Smith and David Coleman rounding out the top 10.
Yeah, we'll move from there back to 11th and 12th, Ty Delaney and Andrew Ritchie. Good qualifying efforts from both of these guys. Moving back to 13th and 14th, Troy Maguire and Troy Stone Street. So 2 Troys all the way down on row number 7. Moving back to the 8th row of the grid, we'll see Joe Mahoney off alongside of Tim Mulford. Be interesting to keep an eye on both of those guys. Off of row number 9 is going to be Craig Schultz and Bruce Tannock. Tannock very quick in the practice session. Could be on the way to move his way forward throughout the race. Aaron Gilbert and William Brown are going to round out the 10th row of the grid.
Yeah, Aaron Gilbert, of course, the V8 support category reigning champion. Mark Poynton and Stephen Banks will go off the 11th row of the grid, with Alex Newton starting alongside Vincent Skilbeck, a true veteran of V8SCOPS. He's been here for years. Dean Reddit from Riot Sim Racing alongside Jamie McKnight, who makes his return to V8SCOPS after struggling to pre-qualify for quite some time. The 2 Riot Sim Racing cars of Alan Dawson and Stefan Lawrence will start 27th and 28th. Rounding out the top 30, we have Chris Miller and Phoenix Racing Team's Sho Kanatake. Scott McKenzie, the 31st car on the grid for Phase 4 Motorsport, did not set a time in practice. Of course, Dan Stevens in the Proven Energy Porsche Mission R is our safety car driver, and he will likely be making an appearance tonight.
Yeah, I get the feeling. There was a few questions actually asked of how much juice is actually in that Porsche. Good news, it's an electric battery. It starts all the way charged up. You can't actually uncharge it. There's no benefit with a battery pack system to actually starting it uncharged. So it does start fully charged up. The only problem, it takes 15 minutes to charge. So if he drains that thing down...
Yeah, oh god, yeah. I can only imagine, if this was an endurance race and we saw multiple appearances from the safety car, man, it would be a bit of trouble for Dan Stevens there. But we're certainly hoping for a clean start here with the Banter Alliance Mustangs starting on that pole position. Joshua Horton for Vermilion starting on the front row with him. This is going to be a great matchup coming into the first turn. The timer hits 0 and we get ready to go here. V8SCOPS Split 2 at Belle Isle as the revs rise is go. And that's an excellent launch there from James Chastaner. Unfortunately not nailed for the Commodore of Justin McLean. He gets swamped by the field coming into the first turn. Out of turn 2 is the big first choke point, and already seeing a great start from David Kirby. Almost got turned there by Horton, and Tyler Blackburn takes advantage, makes it 3 wide down the straight, but filters ahead by the time they get to turn 2. This is the big braking zone here. Byron Pierce going off the circuit there into the runoff area for Alpha Venturi Racing. 7th place start for him. Disaster falling down the field.
How good's the start in the qualifying effort, though, from David Kirby? That's one of his better qualifying efforts of the season. Best fishy driver in terms of this pack. That's a phenomenal little statement. He's got some work to do, though. He's got some practice laps around here, though, as well, and there's a potential for him to keep pushing his way forward.
James Chastaneuf leading by 1.5 seconds over Tyler Blackburn as they make their way into turn 7 for the first time. There's a lot of racing going on back in the field here. Let's see if there's any big moves being made. Stefan Lawrence almost looking up the inside of Vincent Skillbeck there at the turn. And side by side between Alex Newton and Alan Dawson. Dawson sent wide there, compromised exit. That'll allow Chris Miller through, and he'll be able to jump into 26th place. It looks like Bruce Tannock has had an issue somewhere along the line. He's fallen all the way down, and I think he might be our first real casualty of this event.
Yeah, and remember, cannot make that pit stop. I think he's got internet issues, actually, if I'm going to be honest. Yeah, his quality's dropped completely out, so his internet connection's gone. I've also just gone back and had a little bit of a look. Dave Kirby had a phenomenal start, got into second place before he got to turn 1. So phenomenal start from him. Bump and run, though. I think Tyler Blackburn's actually in a little bit of trouble with that one. Be worth going back and having a look at the replay, because the other problem, Tyler Blackburn and it was Josh Horton, my apologies, that made the bump and run. Josh Horton, Tyler Blackburn probably Horton, bump and run, definitely. I think he's going to have to get that spot back.
Yeah, we'll see what race control decides on that front. The race for the lead is basically non-existent for the time being, waiting for someone to get a bit of pace and try and challenge James Chastaneuf for the lead. But this is a very interesting fight. Benjamin Smith, Michael Whiting and David Coleman rounding out the top 8 as things stand. Everyone so close together here on the first couple of laps. We'll see them space out a little bit, I'm sure, unless there's a safety car. But for now, you've got to get into your rhythm. You've got to figure out where you're going to make those moves, because they don't come easy here.
I think one of the biggest things, though, for these fishy guys, I think this is going to be the replay. So have a look at the start. The initial start from Blackburn and Horton both wasn't all that great. And I think you're going to see Kirby. Kirby sweeps in here. And then, right there, that's the little whack. Doesn't get the best of runs, and then stays in it, does Horton. Tries to get down to the inside when he gets down the end here. That's a clear bump and run.
Yeah, it is. I think Kirby, a little compromised on the exit of 2 himself. He didn't quite nail the throttle like he wanted to. It's very difficult on cold tyres to get that done. Who was that in the background getting into the wall? Looks like one of the fishy cars. The redress order has just come through for Joshua Horton. He's allowed David Kirby back through and into 3rd spot. So now they can start battling again.
Yeah, right call, because that's, hey guys, there was a little bit of an infringement here. This is not an illegal overtake. Swap it back, go again. Right call. Absolutely right call. I love watching redresses because it doesn't take you out of the race, still gives you a lot of the opportunity. 100% the right call. Having a little bit of a look sort of up and down the field. One of the big things right now, Michael Whiting's actually just been passed by Ben Smith. So right now there's a little bit of moving and shaking. The fishy guys have got about 3 cars all at the head of this train. They've got the opportunity to try and get their compulsory pit stops in a couple of different windows. I think they'll trigger Whiting first because he's got the least track position. They'll throw him down. The other thing is, you can talk about that track position. What does the pit stop look like? Where do you come out? Those are 2 big keys. Tyre wear will matter around here. 30 laps, 111 litres, long run. So there's a couple phases. I think you won't see the undercut be triggered before lap 10. I'd be saying Whiting right now. I'm sending him in lap 11.
Yeah, as early as they can without compromising the rest of the race. This track is mainly concrete, which has different wear characteristics on the tyres to asphalt. The tyres don't grip up on the concrete as much as they do on that dark-coloured asphalt coming out of turn 2. And the rubber, as it builds up, sits on top of the racetrack, so it can get very slippery when the tyres overheat and they start to wear.
Well, think about cement. Think about, your driveway and your carport at home. Anytime you got cement, right? There's a couple little tiny pores, but there's not those regular gaps. Normally, cement's got a really nice polished surface. You're right. The rubber's got nowhere to go. And what they're looking for is a little bit of bite. Rubber on rubber makes reasonable contact, but when it's sitting up on top of that, it builds up on top and you get an uneven surface, not a nice even surface for the tyre to completely bite into. Of course, rain comes down. That all changes. You want all those sharp stones to bite.
Yeah, indeed you do. But these cars are not rain-enabled just yet. Could be in the very near future. We'll have to wait and see on that. Regardless, battle's still going on. Saw Benjamin Smith hitting the wall coming out of turn 6. He was compromised a little bit, but Horton now on the back of Kirby for the last position on the podium, and this is one of the most crucial positions in the race. The top 3 from split 2 get to start in split 1 if they so choose, and that's a big opportunity for some extra points if you can get it done. So Horton, he's pushing very hard. He's right on it. He's actually gotten a great run on Kirby here, but David's going to go defensive into the first corner. Horton threading the needle, almost getting into the barrier.
One of the big things, and the reason why Horton made that bump and run, was he's got great drive. He's going to do that yet again. But again, Kirby's just got the car in all the right spots just to be an issue. Now, this starts to play in the back of my mind. Okay, we've got a fishy car at the head of this queue. There's a couple of fishy cars. We've already talked about the strategy. Let's get off cycle with these guys. They're going to make contact.
Yeah, David Kirby on the defensive there, went a bit deep, and that's opened up the opportunity. Oh no, Horton sent into the wall by Jamie Dyke.
Yeah, that left rear tire's off. That's off. There's no way he gets that back to the pits.
Oh no. Oh, it's such a shame for Josh Horton. Yeah, you can see that the left rear is sticking out there. He's going to stop. He's going to ask for a tow from race control, and this might be the opportunity for that first safety car of the race, but they're still under green flag conditions for the moment. Dyke now facing off against Smith.
Well, that'll be really, really interesting. We'll have to have a look back at that one. So he's actually continued on. What he was waiting for was the hole in the traffic. Street course, obviously, there's just nowhere you can go. One spot he did have the opportunity to let the whole field pass. I reckon he's going to get this back to the lane.
Yeah, well, if he can, it'd be a great effort from Josh Horton, but you can see how unstable the car is. Look at the toe out on the left rear there. That thing will be no fun to drive at all, but he's got the gap, he's got the clear air in front of him and behind. He should be able to get back to the lane without further incident. We'll get another view of how that happened here. It started with the defense from David Kirby, just a bit deep, made contact with Horton through the corner, and you'd say that Kirby had the right to be there, and then Jamie Dyke went in, and that's interesting. I don't know if that was netcode or that was Horton losing it on the grass.
I think it was as well. The secondary look, there was enough of a gap between the cars, and what you're looking for in terms of netcode contact is generally as a big old hit. There was no violent reaction through that car's suspension. The weight didn't transfer, so I don't think there was contact.
Yeah, okay, so Jamie Dyke might live to fight another day, but it's certainly not going to be the case here for the fishy car of Michael Whiting, who gets sent into the barriers by the race on Oz car of Benjamin Smith, who's already had quite a tough race. Careful on the rejoin, got a whole bunch of cars coming up on him here. Now the Riot car of Stefan Lawrence will see the opportunity here. Oh man, Michael Whiting will be absolutely fuming from that.
Just request a tow. He's not getting that car back to pit lane, so he's called for a tow, and he's just off the racing line. There's no opportunity, so I'm in the pit lane immediately if I'm any of these guys.
Yeah, I'm sure that they'll have heard that on the in-sim radio, and we'll see if the safety car ends up getting called, because, yeah, this is the prime opportunity for them to get their mandatory pit stop out of the way. If they do, though, it does mean that they'll have to conserve, as there's problems for Smith here. It looks like he's gained some damage there from that contact with Whiting, and it's just compounded with a run into the wall. Oh, look at the wheel. There's absolutely no stability in that car at the moment. You see the amount of left hand down he's got.
Yeah, the problem is they've just called safety car as well, so the field's air quotes frozen. Now, there's two takes on this. As a race controller, you take a look at him and you go, he's not maintaining consistent speed. I don't think we let him back in the queue. Or you say hard and fast, no overtaking, full stop. I don't want to make that decision. I'm going to be honest, I think both cases are correct.
Yeah, tough decision for race control to make there as the pit lane comes alive, and we've had a huge amount of drivers come into the pits, everyone from David Kirby all the way down to the back of the field. So the top 9 at the moment staying out. Chasteauneuf, Blackburn, Dyke and Coleman, they're among the drivers who haven't taken their stop here. They'll be at a disadvantage later. This is how it all happened between Benjamin Smith and Michael Whiting. Smith trying up the inside, but the move wasn't on.
Yeah, not quite far enough up. You've got to remember, 90-degree corners like that, what I would have been doing for Benjamin Smith is, okay, force him to cover, force him offline, then try and build the run. You can't do it there. You've got to be basically level to stay in that spot and sort of get an opportunity, because the next corner is the right-hander. Whiting just gets the run onto the back straight and you're done. You don't get that move done.
No, certainly not. Well, our leaders have decided to make their way into the pit lane, and good opportunity for them. I think it might have been too late for them to make the call to come to the pits when the safety car was actually called, so they've had to wait an extra lap to do it. That will mean that they might have a bit more tyre life in them at the end of the race, but will they end up losing out to the likes of David Kirby, who's still going there at full race pace? The pit stops have been running about 10 seconds, all 4 tyres being changed and a little bit of fuel as well. So Chastaneuf making his way out of the pit lane. He's going to keep the lead, but David Kirby moving up to 3rd spot.
Yeah, so Kirby was 3rd spot just beforehand. He just hung on to his position, nearly lost that one to his teammate, but the big key is he made actually a lot of gains there compared to Tyler Blackburn, so his in-lap was actually quite good. They were starting to lose the cars ahead, so the problem I've got for David on that first stint was he was a little bit, it looked like he was struggling to get the car pitched in was his biggest issue. 2 things potentially was the contact from Horton into the back of him at turn 2 potentially wore some rear tyre out, so he's thrown some bar at it to take some turn in. Now he's got the opportunity to go the other way, reset, and that's what this next stint is going to be all about. Okay, I don't have a good high fuel car. Well, we're back to high fuel-ish. This won't be a full tank, this one. This is going to be somewhere in the realm of about 95-ish litres, because that's the amount of fuel that they sort of brought out. They would have put a little bit back in, maybe just on top of 100. So it's going to be quite tight in terms of fuel. You will be reasonably high, but now he's got to go, okay, the first stint was like this. My tyres, put some heat in them, particularly on that first lap, critical lap. Don't want to damage the tyre on that opening lap. That was an opportunity. Does he go, okay, do I make some changes here? I think I'd stay quite balanced just because of the attitude of the car. Feel it. Go 2 or 3 laps in, then you go, okay, I've got to make a change to these bars straight away.
Yeah, exactly. Will that attitude result in profit for David Kirby? I mean, he'll obviously want to win, of course, but can he match the pace of Blackburn and Chastaneuf? Blackburn, of course, with that brilliant run off the start, taking advantage of the contact between Horton and Kirby. I would say that Kirby on pace alone is probably quicker than Blackburn, but definitely not quicker than Chastaneuf. So maybe Kirby's plan from here on out will just be to defend 3rd spot, because remember, that's the last golden ticket position.
Yeah, and that's a big key, but what you're asking for him right now is there's going to be 22 laps this time by left in the race. That's actually a fairly long way. That's about 80-ish sort of kilometres is what we're talking about. He's got to be able to hold off on that. We're having a lot of problems there. The big defense that he's got now is he's got teammates in behind him, right? So everyone else that was sort of getting checked up a little bit, he might get a little bit of a few favours from Jamie Dyke. He might get halfway through this stint and go, I just can't hold you off anymore. I'm just going to let it go. And he will release Dyke. Potentially, that's something that could happen. Jamie could get up into first spot. Depends. Restart's got to be good. Setting it up. Big thing to consider, though, on this restart, overtaking's a little bit more difficult. I'm probably looking about 8th, 9th spot, and it's got to be off a mistake off of turn 2. But once that happens, you can have 5 cars fire down the inside of you if you're not careful.
Yeah, such is Belle Isle. Well, we're hearing as well that there's an unsafe rejoin under review here for Benjamin Smith. So remember, this is what brought out the safety car in the first place. Smith sending Michael Whiting into the wall, and then he decides to get back going as the pack's coming up to him, and that resulted in the Riot Sim Racing Mustang having to back off a bit out of the corner. Man, the 052 certainly got a big scare there, so no wonder that's under review.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's not a lot of great options, right? So from his perspective, there's not a lot of great options. Is it worth the penalty? Well, what you're looking at in terms of an unsafe rejoin is you're looking for significant action to avoid. If somebody else has just have to lift off slightly, considering the situation in terms of the number of cars around here, he hasn't caused an incident is certainly one of the big keys. There is obviously some avoiding action. The key will be, is it enough to trigger a penalty? If it is, I think it's going to be a minor penalty. That's a reasonably clean rejoin. If he rejoins a little bit earlier, he's waiting for Michael Whiting to get out of the way, and then Whiting goes, yeah, all right, there's not much I can really do. He recognises that pretty quickly. He has no clue there's cars are too wide in behind him, and I don't think that's a reasonable expectation. But yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's just difficult in that section as well. It's tight quarters. There's no grass in that part of the circuit for drivers to run off on and just wait. You know, effectively, Smith was in the middle of the racetrack after the incident happened. But we'll keep an eye on that, see what develops. We are getting to the restart here on the end of the 9th lap of this race. James Chastaneuf puts the power down, and we are back to green flag racing in V8SCOPS Split 2. Blackburn sticking well with him, and it seems that Chastaneuf didn't quite get the run on the rest of the field that he wanted. They're all on fresh tyres now. It is a reset for pretty much everyone in the field. Ty Delaney looking at Justin McLean, who's one of only 3 cars that remains in the position they started in. The other 2 are David Kirby and James Chastaneuf in 3rd and 1st. Delaney just not he's not going for it at this stage. He needs to just get into the rhythm. I was about to congratulate Vincent Skilbeck on being the car with the most positions gained, but he's just had an issue at turn 3. He will fall behind Alexander Newton.
The other big note that I made actually of that restart, David Kirby had another big slide coming off a turn 2. Heat's gone straight back into those rear tyres. So there's a lot of guys that are struggling at the moment. Track conditions only about 32 degrees Celsius, so reasonably mid-range in terms of our track conditions. Wind is gusting around. I think that's the big key.
Yeah, that could result in some instability in the higher speed corners around this place. Maybe the braking zone for turn 7 as well, because that's basically a corner in and of itself. Back to the lead. Have a look at how much Tyler Blackburn is pressuring James Chastaneuf. I wasn't expecting Blackburn to be as close to Chastaneuf as he is.
Yeah, this is a good restart. Remember the difference here on this one was that Chastaneuf got a really free kick at that start just because the guys that were right in behind him didn't get a great launch, and then there was all that squabbling and kerfuffle with Dave Kirby down at turn 2. This is the first time he's getting a little bit tested. Kirby's reasonable in terms of his first lap pace as well. Remember that slide? That'll be worth thinking about in the back of your mind as well. Just keep that one, be aware of it. But for now, yeah, the pace across that top group, we're looking probably 5 laps from now is where I'm sort of worried about. That'll tell us a lot more about this story.
Ty Delaney with an attempt to get by Justin McLean, unsuccessful. Pass made, though, for Mark Poynton on Aaron Gilbert, but it's a little bit messy on the exit. That gives a massive opportunity for Jamie McKnight to get a nice freebie there. Just parks it on the racing line in front of Gilbert and protects the position. McKnight is now the car with the most positions gained in the field, up 11 spots.
Yeah, big thing from Jamie McKnight was that he's been struggling actually to qualify into this field. Finally managed to crack that nut and getting himself into the field, making a lot of headway. That's the big thing. You know, when you're presented with an opportunity, when you're presented with a time to really test yourself. Jamie's been not the happiest in terms of his sim racing over the last probably 12 months or so. He was starting to fall back of it. He was actually making a decision on whether or not he wanted to hand off the reins of setup building for the V8 veterans on Thursday nights, because they run on fixed sets, obviously, to somebody else, because he just wasn't enjoying a whole bunch of things. Reinvigorated, a lot more practice, a lot more towards the pointy end, and it shows.
Yeah, indeed it does. Yeah, McKnight's driving very well at the moment, taking advantage of incidents happening in front of him and, crucially, keeping it clean. Well, end of the second racing lap off this restart. James Chastaneuf has gotten a little gap over Tyler Blackburn now. 0.6 of a second is the gap, but it is on behind. Man, David Kirby, he's starting to feel the pressure from those behind. Not least his teammate Jamie Dyke, but David Coleman is right in the midst of all of that as well. Another Fishy driver there, and well, Fishy's going to be happy with the positions they're in at the moment, but they have to sort out who's really the quicker of them here, especially facing that kind of pressure from McLean and Delaney. Oh, little bit of issues further back here. The Pacific Racing Esports car or Pacific Esports Racing car, the 077 there, Stephen Banks getting all sorts of crossed up behind Skilbeck.
Yeah, so settle in, make sure you're looking after those tyres right now. The other thing to think about in terms of this restart, for the guys who did pit earlier on that end of lap 6, they've got 24 laps to go in terms of their racing as well, as we're going to see the overtake down the inside.
Yeah, this is what put Skillbeck back one position. That was the move being made there by Craig Schultz of 9.5 Sim Sports. Also, Stephen Banks's issues compounded at turn 7. That's a very difficult corner to recover from if you get it wrong. There's no opportunity, and oh dear, the 86 of Sho Kanataka gets involved too. Hello, Alpha Venturi Racing. That's a great position gain there.
Oh, there's a big moment. Some of Ty Delaney. Ty Delaney's just had a huge moment. There's another car. David Coleman's just hit the fence.
Oh no. Oh, that's massive. I'm seeing Justin McLean falling down the order as well. As the Suitspeed.com replay concludes. Oh dearie me. McLean spun around there at the exit of turn 2. Oh, got to be careful. He can't get it flicked around. Interesting. I think he might have a lot of damage.
Yeah, and there was another car. I'm sure it was Kirby.
And the engine's gone.
Yeah, Ty Delaney as well was involved, so this will tell it.
Oh yeah, Delaney and McLean making contact into turn 1, and then McLean just destabilised, potentially some suspension damage as well, and yeah, you hit the wall at that angle with the front of the car, there's no saving it.
Yeah, and the other thing was, I thought it was David Coleman. I was wrong. It wasn't Coleman, it was McLean, so that's a case of mistake and identity right there.
Indeed, David Coleman still holding on to a position in the top 5. McLean is continuing on. He's going to bring that into the pits. Whether or not the car will actually be able to make it to the pits is another matter entirely, and he's in a bit of an interesting spot on the circuit. He's got a few drivers now having to make their way up to him. Regardless, the battle for 6th. Well, Troy Maguire holding on to this one ahead of Troy Stone Street and Andrew Ritchie for Banter Alliance. Meanwhile, Ty Delaney falling back in the order. He's now down to 10th, but he's going to try and get past William Brown here. Has the exit from turn 2. Well, it looks reasonable. I think a move up the inside into turn 3 is going to be a tough ask.
Yep, and the other big thing is, making sure that you're looking after everything right now. You've got to regather yourself up, get back in that rhythm, because again, those walls are going to continue to be right there. The biggest thing you can do right now to really make your night a living hell is get flustered. It's about, even though it's a street circuit, you're puffing, you're panting. We're talking to a lot of the drivers on Thursday night out of Vets. They were saying, man, that was a lot. Really the mental. And the other side of things around here that we haven't even talked about yet is the mental load. It's a big mental workout. 30 laps. Remember, we're going longer when we go all the way over to Split 1. This is a big, big mental load night.
Indeed. Street circuit is never a nice thing to do for a very long time. The leaders are about to get caught. The leaders are about to catch Benjamin's. Justin McLean. But he's just going to be able to make it into the pits by the time they come up on him. So there was potential for a bit of drama there, but it will ultimately come to naught. We'll be able to continue on under green flag conditions. No safety car from that incident. We can turn our attention back to the battle for 3rd. The fishy trio here of Kirby, Dyke and Coleman.
Yeah, this is going to be a really, really interesting one. You can just see that Kirby's just he's a little bit closer than he was in that last one. So remember, I wanted to look at this about 5 laps after we've gone back to green flag racing. He's there and thereabouts, but he's still ailing. I reckon the 2 guys that are right behind him, they've got the capability to go and harass Tyler Blackburn. So you need to do a little bit of team orders here. They always say over at Fishy, don't they? I mention this a lot because they make a point of it. There's no team orders here. If we're going to race for a position, we're really, really going to race for it. Really good in theory. Pulling that off in terms of practice is very, very difficult. Do you say Jamie Dyke, David Coleman, maybe they've got a little bit of a better opportunity than me to go and harass it and get better spots out of Split 1? That's a worthwhile consideration. That's a consideration you don't have in any other series. So that's worth discussing. It's worth being aware of in the background, because as soon as Dyke gets alongside, I reckon Kirby will pull out, but he's got to get alongside first. That's generally the way they play.
Who's that stopped on the outside of turn 10 there? That's Josh Horton. He's come back out of the pits after the damage he sustained, and somehow he's come to a stop elsewhere on the circuit. Oh, and the engine's gone too. What on earth has happened to the number 80?
So I think he's repaired the car and then gone back out. And what's happened is it wasn't completely repaired. There's a bar or something that wasn't quite right. As he's got to a specific location, rears come out from underneath him.
Yeah, actually, it looks like I've just gone back and checked. He ran wide in turn 7 and clipped the wall. There you go. There's the incident, and that's destroyed the left-hand side of the car. I think he just stopped where he did to allow the field by, and then he could continue on. He has been cleared to tow as well, so we aren't going to see a safety car from that. Josh Horton back in the pits now, and what a disaster it is for Josh Horton. He started on the front row. How would you be if you were in his position?
I mean, that's the difficulty, isn't it? But that's street circuit racing. You're either going to commit in your head, I'm going to be a little bit passive here, and he waited, he tried to present himself with an opportunity, but you've got to be really clean and concise when you try and go for those moves. Everything that I was talking about back at Winton in terms of racecraft, it's that, but a little bit more when you come to Detroit Belle. I think he was probably not a little bit concise enough, not quite far enough up. Yeah, he got a little bit rubbed, yeah, and then he made a fraction of mistake, but you've got to be inch perfect, and he just wasn't inch perfect, and that's the difference between a great night and a DNF.
Well, Mark Poynton up 6 positions, P15 chasing down McKnight and Gilbert. Hearing that Poynton had a slowdown somewhere, so not too sure where he got that. There's not many places here on the circuit you can get a slowdown. Apparently it was turn 1, yeah, he'll fall back as a result of that. I'm impressed that McKnight's been able to hold on to that position over Aaron Gilbert since taking that spot. But back to the lead. Well, James Chastaneuf is in the rhythm now, isn't he?
So, update, you just mentioned Mark Poynton and Aaron Gilbert. Yeah, we'll jump back to James Chastaneuf. So what's gone on is Poynton just got ordered to do a redress for an incident on lap number 11, turn 3. So he just redressed that position to Aaron Gilbert.
Might have to redress something to his rear tyres as well, the way he backed it into turn 3 there. Probably Juiced Racing is a team that we've seen quite a bit on SimSpeed broadcasts over the last few years. We'll see what the incident was ultimately. Oh, it was the incident that we saw live when Poynton made his way past Gilbert. Yeah, the hit, the damage, that's what gave McKnight the position there. We saw that when it happened. Meanwhile, bad news for Vincent Skilbeck. He's gotten damage. He has fallen back down to 23rd, and he's, oh dear, having a lot of trouble there. Oh, Chris Miller as well. Good Lord.
How do you see that? The first thing that jumps to my mind is something's just happened to the circuit, or what I can see is that the track temps come up by about 2 degrees. What I'm seeing, though, is that the wind is still swinging around. Now, the gusts have come down, which is good. Safety car's deployed again, so it's second safety car of the night.
That'd be for Chris Miller. He hasn't been able to get going after his incident there, and it looks like he came to a stop at turn 4 there. So second safety car of split 2 is go, with 13 laps remaining, coming up to 12. Righto, this will be interesting indeed.
Yeah, this is going to make a really, really interesting race. So keep in the back of your mind what we've just done in terms of race distance. We've done about 10 racing laps on these tyres now. Times have fallen off, right? Last time by 31.3 for Tyler Blackburn. His fastest lap, 30.553. He's got the fastest lap of the race as it currently stands. So we've fallen off in the realm of 0.8 of a second. Well, what does that look like? You were just starting to see it from all the drivers. A lot of that rear end getting away from them. So bar adjustments, we're right in the realm of sort of bar adjustments for a lot of them. The rears was just starting to come around a little, particularly on the corner entry. You've got that fuel that was balancing the car all the way into the braking zone. And now that fuel's come off, car's a little bit lighter, you can carry a little bit more speed, pulls up a little bit quicker as well, so carrying a little bit more speed, and as they got to tip it in, it's just not that amount of weight in the rear end to just sort of settle it, so you just got to soften that off, a little bit more weight in the rear end, but yeah, it's not necessarily worked out. What I would be thinking about is, again, track position versus strategy position. If I'm at the back end of the field, there's a couple cars crawling around really towards the back end of the lead lap, 22nd and 23rd, which I believe is Alan Dawson and Byron Pierce. Come down the pit lane. Fresh tyres. We've got no track position. Even 21st spot is actually a really good one. Sho Kanataki as well. He's got damage, so opportunity for him to throw some fresh tyres at it.
Very good point. I was about to raise that. Because yeah, if you're all the way down the field, the likes of Alan Dawson have actually come down the pit lane again themselves. So has Benjamin Smith, who we saw got a warning for that unsafe rejoin. Yeah, if you are back down in the field, yeah, get some fresh rubber on it. You'll benefit because the field's compressed here under safety car. When you get restarted, you'll be on fresher tyres than everyone else. Drivers up the front of the field, though, probably mindful to stay out. They don't want to be taking. Yeah, I mean, they'd have fresh rubber, but they would lose too much track position to really get those
100%.
positions back in the laps remaining.
And
Now,
risk.
Yes. Yeah, it's a big risk, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the problem is overtaking, right? So we've already seen a couple of incidents people trying to charge their way through. Byron Pierce has come to the lane. He's the only driver on the lead lap. Vincent Skilbeck's, I think, in the lane as well.
He'll be damage repair for sure.
Yeah, so, but yeah, literally the only driver that's actually come for fresh tyres is Byron Pierce. Now, the big thing that I was just thinking about was Logitech Pro Invitational. Watkins Glen was the most recent round. There were a couple drivers with a late safety car there, and I think they only had about 10 laps left to run. We're going to have about that here. And the big one that springs to mind was, and now his name's just run away from me, Stenny, yeah. Stenberg was the big gainer. Basically, he pit, come out 2 spots behind where he went into the pits, gained like 7 spots in 10 laps, right? That's a big win at a short lap time. Somewhat similar here. I think you've got a few extra opportunities to make those overtakes around here with the fresher tyres, and 0.8 of a second to a second worth of fall off. I think you can make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So keep an eye on Byron Pierce to see if he can work his way back up. While we're under safety car for one more lap here, I want to make a request to our producer, Jay. The onboard of Chris Miller, the incident that brought out the safety car, because I noticed something when looking back at that incident, which explains why he ultimately came to a stop. It all started when he was making the move on Dean Redet for 20th position. And unfortunately, he just, I think it was a compression lock on the downshifts that sent him around. But the hit completely destroyed his front suspension. And he tried turning in for turn 4. The car just didn't respond.
That's the difference, isn't it? You know, you look back a month ago and so this don't give us the vision.
Yeah. I think we should switch to like a roll bar view or something like that. See his hands working the wheel. That's the initial contact. The front left completely destroyed here. And he'll turn in and look at that. The car just goes straight on.
And by that point in time, you know, you've got a couple meters to react, jump on the brake pedal. There's nothing you could have done, so...
Absolutely. Turn 4 is one of those corners that's basically just a little stab of the brakes, turn in and carry the speed through the corner. You know, if you're having issues with the front suspension, that's, oh dear, that's a bit of a problem there for Benjamin Smith. Already having a very rough race, and it's just getting worse.
You just jumped on comms and said, my bad.
Oh, no.
We're having a bad night, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's going to resume his position in the queue. That is, if he's allowed to.
He's got the lead lap, so this is a wave by.
Oh, right. Yeah, wave around, of course. So that's going to delay things a little bit. I don't know if we're going to be getting the safety car in this lap, but now that Smith is clear, I think that'll give us the space we need.
Interesting to note, Byron Pierce has actually just come back to the lane yet again, and Craig Schultz also just came to the pit lane. So I think for Schultz, he recognised, I'm right towards the back end of the pack. There's only a couple cars behind me. We've got 10 laps left. I think we can actually go back and get some spots. So that was after he caught the pack. The difference is he actually could have come out ahead of a couple cars if he'd pit immediately. Didn't utilise that opportunity. So he would have had a little bit more track position. Other things to consider is we started this race with 32 cars. We're down to 24 on the lead lap. I think we'll be 25 on the lead lap this time by. But yeah, 25 cars left in the race. We've already lost 7.
Yeah, and that's in the space of only 20 laps, a good portion of which have been under safety car conditions. So, yeah, I've noticed both Byron Pierce and Craig Schultz, their pit stops were 24 and 26 seconds. So I think they've gotten some damage repair done while they've been at it. Good time for that to happen under safety car.
May as well. I mean, if you come into the pit lane, so the thought process for those guys is in terms of whether or not to repair the damage is basically, okay, we're going to be going around for under safety car again. All right, I'm coming down for the tyres anyway. I'm at the back end of the pack. Why not? Right? It's like I get a few different opportunities here to really give myself the best machinery capable of grabbing those spots. That's what they're thinking about. Yeah, I think we're in for a little bit of an interesting shootout here. I think the key result that's now on the table is what happens to David Kirby. I think he's ailing. I think he's in trouble. And this is an opportunity for some of his teammates in behind him to actually go see if they can chase down a race win. But SimSpeed Darling leads the way, James Chastanoff.
Indeed, he does. And, I mean, he's looked unassailable all night so far, hasn't he? Qualified on pole position, has led pretty much every lap so far. And, well, these guys will be in a tiny bit of trouble at the end with how long they've been pushing these tyres, but that extra safety car period, all this time spent touring around, it'll cool the tyres back down. It'll allow them a little bit more to use in these final 9 laps of racing that are to come. One more lap under safety car, and then we can get back to racing.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I'm really chomping at the bit to go for a little bit of a shootout here because it's going to be a little bit like that. Chasty, the key for Chasty is a couple of things. Not only has he had the short run speed to get himself in, and the qualifying pace was quite good as well, he's also looked quite good on the long run. That margin just starts to eke out. So Blackburn's been able to go with him-ish, but not all the way. He's been able to just sort of shadow him, but never actually looked at like he's got an opportunity to overtake. The drivers I'm really watching and looking at and going, these guys have actually got some pace, is probably Jamie Dyke, David Coleman. But Dave Kirby's in the way. And this is a qualifying spot for Split 1, so it's kind of really, really important. If there was a couple extra qualifying spots, I reckon they probably wouldn't worry about it. They probably shuffle around and go for points, but because there's only the 3 qualifying spots, I think that's the key factor in the not swapping positions at this point in time.
Yeah, it all depends on how much David Kirby can hold on to the pace. If you're interested in looking at his pace in real time, go to the live timing page, live.grip.com. That's Grip with 3 eyes. They are our live timing provider for V8SCOPS. Brilliant work from the guys at Grip, and present on many a SimSpeed broadcast these days. We're going to get ready to go back racing here in Split 2. It will be 9 to go at the line when Chastaneuf gets on the power. Through the last proper corner he goes, immediately on the power. Beautiful run there. Caused a bit of confusion back in the field. Looks like David Coleman had to lift off a little bit to avoid passing Jamie Dyke before the line. But we are back to green flag racing. Troy Stone Street we're looking at chasing Troy Maguire. This is a big battle indeed. These guys could fancy a chance of getting into the top 5.
Yeah, did you see the attitude from Jamie Dyke as he crested the hill at the exit of turn 2? So now it's about thinking, am I close enough? I'd really like to see Ty Delaney get a little bit more aggressive again. I think he's got pace as well. William Brown's the next driver ahead of him. Will Brown's had a really, really quiet night at the office. He's been aggressive, made a couple spots. He's actually plus 11 at this point in time. Could still grab a few more here.
Oh, problem for Dean Reedet and Stephen Banks as well. The Pacific Esports Racing Mustang very slow at the moment, and I think falling out of the circuit as well potentially. I think there might be some technical issues for him there, but we will see. In any case, racing continues up at the top. James Chastaneuf and Tyler Blackburn starting to skip away from David Kirby, and he's now the cork in the bottle for his Fishy Motorsport teammates.
Yeah, and that's the problem, isn't it? Now they've got to make some decisions about what's going on up here. Do they start to get aggressive because they're just getting backed up into the traffic? And Maguire's got pace at the moment, as does Troy Stone Street. So, this is a really, really tricky moment to sort of manage in the race. And I think Ty Delaney, if you have a look back there in the background, I think he's got some potential as well. This is the incident for Stephen Banks.
Yeah, so on the bottom of your screen there, Banks going up the inside of Redet, and unfortunately, seems like they came together on the exit there. Redet on the rejoin there, he got on the grass, got back on the circuit, and Banks could do nothing as he was slammed in the side.
Yeah, unfortunate. Difficult way to end the night. They were having a good old scrap back there as well, and generically a good race up until that point. So either way, like I said, Will Brown's one of the really interesting guys to sort of keep half an eye on, see if he can continue that progress, see if he can get to the back end of Andrew Ritchie as well.
Yeah, William Brown with an excellent run up through the field. Jamie McKnight up 13 spots. Sho Kanatake up 12, and Stefan Lawrence up 11 as well. Some drivers in the midfield that have had great benefit from all of the drama that we've seen here today. But looks like Brown is going to be in trouble here with Ty Delaney right behind him, and we have Joe Mahoney in the midst of all of this as well. Mahoney, a driver we haven't given much airtime to in this race. He's been a little anonymous, working his way through the midfield, but he's had a clean race so far, and he's one of the drivers joining us on the Zoom wall for tonight.
He's got the head down, real focused, really thinking about it, and I've talked to Joe a fair bit of recent note. He's enjoying the supercar. He's done a lot of talking about teammate, Aiden Rice, brand new in the car. Oh my God, how far has he come along? But I think the key for Joe as well is that, he's getting really into the sim lately. He's just enjoying racing, enjoying life, and pushing himself forward.
Yeah, let's see how far he pushes forward if Delaney is delayed in his pursuit of William Brown. Very close indeed for Jamie McKnight as well. He's got Tim Mulford for company, seeing that a couple of positions lost for Alan Dawson. Looks like there was a bit of trouble in that general area of the field, but defensive now from Brown. Trying to keep Delaney behind. Andrew Ritchie is going to skip away from these two. Delaney just can't find a way past in this section.
Yeah, and the thing, remember what I was talking about earlier on in the piece about forcing him to cover you? Well, he's covering everywhere now. So that says to me, or automatically, and this is where Ty's really got. Oh, Mahoney went around.
Oh no! Head on into the barrier there. That's going to be some damage to the engine, the front suspension as well. Will Mahoney be able to get back going? You see the disappointment on his features. He was having a great race up until that point, but the exit of turn 6 claims a victim, and part of it is the rear bumper of the JTIT Race on Oz number 36.
Disappointing. That's a commentator's curse, though. As soon as you say someone's doing quite well, look what happens out the other side. But, yeah, tough night. Well, it was good. It was good up until that point. I was really enjoying watching that drive, but, yeah, disappointing.
Indeed. So he'll finish way down the order, likely no better than 23rd if he can try and find a way past Dean Redet and Scott McKenzie, but the gaps seem just too great at the moment. This is on board with Mahoney, thanks to our friends at Suit Speed, and the exit of turn 6. I'm wondering if he clipped the inside wall there.
Yeah, maybe. And another one. Oh, side by side through turn 1. Teammates. No, not teammates. My apologies.
Yeah, Benjamin Smith making up the place on Alan Dawson there. Smith, of course, getting that wave around under safety car. That's really helped him out here. He's been having his problems here tonight and seems still having some problems on the exit of turn 3. But, well, he can get amongst it again.
Ty Delaney just pulled off a really nice move as well on Will Brown, and that's, yep, perfect. So that's exactly what I was going to talk about. Set him up, made him cover. All right, you want to get defensive? That's fine. Now, remember we talked earlier, you don't get this move done down here. It's not about the right-hander here. It's about staying alongside. A little bit of a whack of the wall, but when he gets down here to turn 5, he's far enough up alongside, and he just can't drive it around the outside of 5 when you're not level like that. So it was all about the setup, and look how long it took him to get that one done.
Yeah, it's definitely a circuit here at Belle Isle where you have to plan your moves well in advance, and Delaney now needs to focus on looking after those rear tyres, not sliding out of the corners. The number 85 of Tim Mulford, one of the top drivers at Phoenix Racing Team, now catching up to his teammate as a result of that move. We'll see if Brown can hold on to his position in the top 10, but our top 6 are all together here right at the end. Chastaneuf's doing a good job right now. He's doing just enough to hold on to that 0.6 of a second gap over Tyler Blackburn, but this fishy quartet, I suppose you could call it now, is certainly looking like there's a few things yet to be sorted out here.
We'll have a look at the response though from Dave Kirby on this run. Remember how I was saying he looked like he was struggling for a lot of turning and he didn't look quite accurate. Now I think Tyler Blackburn's actually the vulnerable car. There's two ways to take this as well. We've got 5 minutes left on this clock race. This is going to be a 30-lap race. We're not going to get there. We are going to go time certain for sure. The difference is it going to be 1 lap time certain or 2 laps? I think we're going to be 2 laps shy at this pace.
Yeah, 2 safety cars with a time limit of 50 minutes. That's certainly going to put things in the time certain territory. So the drivers will be aware of that now, and they'll know that they have to make their moves now or risk not being able to get into split 1. This is the thing, though, for Tyler Blackburn. It seems like in this part of the circuit, he's catching back up to Shasti. It's the early part of the circuit, the run coming out of turn 6 through 7 and 8 that he seems the most in trouble, as well as maybe turns 3 and 4 too. We'll have to keep an eye on that, as well as this. Andrew Ritchie sitting in 8th spot, but Ty Delaney is coming.
Yeah, he is, and Tyler Blackburn's just found some pace as well, so I think maybe a little mistake from David Kirby. Chastaneuf was looking good on those couple of short runs, but now when we get to this really, really long run, remember what I talked about, mental fatigue. This is going to start really taxing the drivers. We're at the end of an hour.
Little bit of a squiggle there from Andrew Ritchie, and Delaney will go to the outside in turn 4, put the power down, and get the move done. Wow.
Well, 2 power moves around the outside. How about that? Not just 1 at turn 4. That makes 2. And again, he had an opportunity to fire it down the inside. No, went to the outside. I've got the confidence to pull the car up here. I've got the confidence, and I think I'm going to get the respect of the guy ahead of me. He's going to give me the space, and space he was given.
Yeah, Ritchie recognised that he was at the disadvantage there. A little bit of a slide, and away he went. So 3 minutes on the clock with an average lap time of about 1:32. Yeah, this is going to be the start of the penultimate lap here at Belle Isle. But there's battles further back in the field here. Byron Pierce, one of the drivers to take fresh tyres under that last safety car, making the move past Sho Kanatake up into 18th spot.
Yeah, and look what the difference tyres have really made to his knife. He was languishing outside the 20s, didn't have a car, had a little bit of damage to work with. And the other thing is, he was 0.4 of a second faster than Craig Schultz. Schultz hit on that last caution as well. So he's certainly got some pace in underneath that 56 machine at the moment, and still an opportunity in the water, but he's running out of time, and the next few cars on the road is just too far gone on him.
Yeah, looks like 18th is what Byron Pierce will have to settle for. It's a real shame considering he started in 7th spot. Could have been hoping for a lot better from this one. Careful, Tyler Blackburn, nearly snatching the protrusion of the concrete barrier there on the exit of turn 5. There's so many places like that around this circuit. They can catch you out. That's why you have to be so exact.
Well, think about it. Coming onto the back straight, the barrier as you come off to turn 6, it's sort of really, really wide initially, so it gives you a little bit more room. So if you fire it in deep, you can turn it back. But as you come out of the corner, the track actually heads back to the right, so it kind of squeezes up. And Jamie Dyke got a big old wiggle on as he come onto that back straight. He was looking to get the power down. Right now he's pulling up the car nice and neatly and trying to fire it off. Kirby's running it a little bit deep into the corners, and he's just sort of able to stabilise at mid-corner and drive off okay. But if Dyke gets a run here, he was deep in that corner.
Yeah, he was. He's been able to get the exit done nicely, though. Troy Maguire as well, pushing hard here to try and get into the top 5. The white flag flies for V8SCOPS Split 2 at Belle Isle. We're going to make it a 29-lap race. Have a look at how much ground the fishy quartet has lost to our leaders here. They're going to come up on Joe Mahoney as well. Maguire having a little bit of a look at David Coleman. Is he going to get it done up the inside? No, he's going to back out, wait for another opportunity, but the battle is on for the lead. Blackburn is still managed to keep it within half a second of James Chastaneuf, and we could see a final lap move if he plays his cards right.
Yeah, well, he's there. This is his last opportunity. He's got to get a really, really good run off of here. And the benefit, remember, for Chastity is... sorry, not for Chastity, for Blackburn is there's no toe for Chastity, but he's got to be a lot further up. The problem he has, he really got to be up there. Now he's sort of asking for a mistake. Mahoney's going to get right out of the way and make sure he plays no part in this. Oh, Kirby's deep! Kirby's deep!
Oh no, he gets into the barrier. Kirby loses his position on the podium. He will not make it into split one. I think he's got some pretty heavy damage on that car too. Jamie Dyke will move into third spot. Blackburn right on the rear of Chastaneuf coming into the last couple of corners, but I don't think there's going to be much of a chance to overcome car 427 at the front of this field. Chastaneuf drove masterfully in this race, overcame everything. Fastest car on track, and he will make his way into split one with the win in split two.
Kirby's not going to make it, and that was an incident for Troy Maguire as he came off the last corner. I think he just fired it down into turn one, just forgot to brake after the race. And reasonable at the office for a number of drivers out there, and you know, a number of cars stayed clean. We could have lost definitely more cars out of that one, but didn't. So
yeah, indeed. It was not as much of a race of attrition as I was expecting, but a celebration time for Chastaneuf, Blackburn and Dyke. Top three, they are invited to race in split one in just a few moments' time. They don't have to, but they have the opportunity to. I mean, you mentioned mental fatigue, Scott. I think the drivers who raced in split two are going to be the most hard done by.
That's a lot of driving, and they're already going to be feeling a little bit second best after coming off of this one, but I drove reasonable. The thing I'm worried about for Chastity is you give him another 5 laps on those tyres, I reckon Blackburn would have got him, but they just never got long enough that tyres to really go in. Cooled him off, got to reset, got to go again. Blackburn was looking really, really strong there at the back end. I think he's actually got a solid shot in split one as well.
Yeah, I think so too. That's your top 10 there. Leaders covered by 0.3 of a second at the front. William Brown managing to hold on to that final position in the top 10. Nicely done from him. Most positions gained in the top 10, actually. Up 10 positions. Very nicely done indeed. Most positions gained in the whole field, though, was Jamie McKnight, the 027, up 14 spots to 12th place. Certainly seeing pretty much everyone on screen at the moment making some kind of gain, except for Craig Schultz and Byron Pierce. Schultz finished where he started, Pierce down 11 spots. Real shame for the Alpha Venturi Racing driver there. Mackenzie and Redet were the last drivers to finish on the lead lap. Skilbeck and Mahoney a lap down, though they did see the flag. Benjamin Smith 3 laps down, and we had retirements from Banks, Miller, McLean, Horton, Whiting, and Bruce Tannock as well, who unfortunately suffered an internet issue and was not able to continue on. Wow. What a race in split two, but the action is certainly not over here tonight. V8SCOPS split one is going to be coming up next here on SimSpeed TV.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
You're watching SimSpeed TV V8 SCOPS Round 6 of 2024. What an interesting night of racing we've already had with the Split 2 action, but now we head on into Split 1. I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be a 2-race affair here. Lovely short sprint racing on the streets of Detroit. If you're just joining us, I'm Reese Gardner. Scott Rankin alongside me in the comms box with Jay Kennedy pressing all the buttons behind the scenes, bringing you these pictures. Well, what have we learned from the first race here at Belle, Scott? Basically, safety cars are going to define the action, and you've got to be very careful about where you make your moves.
Yeah, you've got to be clean, you've got to be concise, you've got to be up far enough. And there's a world where you back out and you still get the place as well because you just force that mistake. It's hard up against those walls. It's difficult racing. It's tricky. It's tough. It's technical. There's a lot of bouncing that goes on in this circuit. And one of the factors that I didn't even plug into my own brain until you mentioned it earlier on was surface changes as well. That's such a big part about the elements of this racetrack. It's probably why I never connected the dots and how to make this place work.
Yeah, it's something that you don't often think about. I mean, if you race ovals and you visit Dover Speedway every so often, you become well aware of how concrete affects the racing surface. I think Nashville Super Speedway
which is where they are this weekend, actually.
Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, you'll be able to see how that works in the real world. Much like it does in the sim, track gets very slippery indeed. So the drivers will be searching and hoping for the next opportunity to get on some nice dark bitumen. This circuit is such fun. I love driving around it. I love watching racing around it. It's just intense the whole way around. You don't get many opportunities to rest.
No, you don't, and it's only a 4-kilometer lap as well, so it's quite a short lap. I mean, even the back straight between 6 and 7. The only place on this circuit that's actually a true straight is to run from 2 to 3. Everywhere else, there's little kinks in it. There's little changes in the rise and the elevation. You could say coming off a 2, there is a little bit of an elevation change, but then it's flat back to the floor. There's no turning the steering wheel. It's just get your car in the right position and set it all off. In terms of technicality, I think this is up there in terms of one of the most technical circuits. Well, circuit to Lebanon is probably a little bit higher, but I don't think we'll ever see supercars there.
Yeah, to my great chagrin, I'd love to see a V8 race around Lebanon just for giggles, really. In any case, we should turn our attention to the action that is to come here in Split 1. Coming out of the last round at Winton Motor Raceway, we go to a 2-race affair at Belle Isle. Same fuel tank restriction as Split 2, 60%. There is 1 compulsory pit stop per race. The races are 24 laps or 60 minutes in length. Now, the time restriction is not as aggressive as it was in Split 2. In order to go time certain, Jay mentioned behind the scenes that we would think around about 4 safety cars per race would put us in danger of going time certain. And Belle Isle does breed safety cars, but I don't think we're going to see that. Progressive grids as well. So the finishing order of race 1 will define the starting order of race 2.
Yeah, I like that as well. So, I mean, if you have a really, really bad late race 1, well, you got to go to the rear. You got to come back all the way back through. Kind of difficult to sort of set that one all up. So, you know, you're on the back foot a little bit. Good to see as well, Chastanoff and Blackburn both did make the jump in, as did Jamie Dykes. So all 3 drivers have made the jump. Big night at the office for those guys.
Yeah. It's going to be a big night at the office for the likes of James Scott and Dylan Rudd as well for Lobs Esports, not to mention the 55 of Luke Rosella, which who joins them after Winton. But Scott and Rudd currently on top in the championship standings. Jake Maloney, one of the biggest stories of last round. He battled so hard for the win with the Lobs Esports guys, and unfortunately getting shuffled a bit around the tight twistiness of Winton.
Yeah, and there was a lot of discussion that sort of went on afterwards, and it was really, really interesting. I just sort of picked the brain of race control just a little bit. And the discussion was, at the end of everything, when you consider it all, about the same amount of paint got traded in either direction, and it was right on and about where the line was. So what race control went, okay, That's where our line is. We're just on the right side of the line. No penalties, remember, from Winton in terms of things. Perfect. That's exactly what I want these guys to sort of understand. And they like that as well, because then they can go, okay, that's what the line looks like. I can race up against that line. I know what that line is. It's nearly like a barrier around the outside of the track. Once you have a line, once you know where that barrier is, once you know what it looks like to cross that barrier, you can go, okay, I know what I can do without getting a penalty. So maintaining consistency is so key for these guys. It was beautiful racing. Everyone said they enjoyed it. They said, yep, look, that's hard racing. Jake said it himself as well. I was blocking a lot, just waiting for the time where I was going to get that little bit of a nudge and that was going to kick everything off, but it wasn't a heavy nudge. So perfect line ball, perfect touring car racing. God, I love this series.
Yeah, me too. Oh man, this V8SCOPS has been a significant presence in my life for almost half my life now. This series has been around for a good 10 years and counting. And one of the newer drivers to the series, couple of seasons experience, Rehan Leonage, sitting in 4th spot. Very successful at Winton. Couldn't quite keep up with the likes of Scott, Rudd, and Maloney, but he was looking very strong indeed. You know, he's just waiting for that breakthrough of consistency, I suppose. There's the occasional round where he's right up the front and he's competing solidly for wins. He just needs to get that going a little more consistently.
Yeah, look, that's the tricky and that's the difficulty with being a young driver. When you have a look at a number of different drivers and what they're capable of, look at your Brock Feeneys, you know, look at your Will Browns that are sort of just really coming through and making their names for themselves at the moment. What you tend to see from those guys, the first one, they come through and they've made their way here on raw pace. Then it's about the consistency. I like looking at Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris as a really good example of that. Whilst they're very similar in terms of their age, it's the amount of experience that they've got in Formula One. That's the difference in terms of pace. When you look at and when you compare those two drivers, you're not comparing apples and apples. You actually comparing more like carrots and baby carrots is effectively the way that you're doing that. Why? It's the amount of time they've spent in the dirt, the amount of time they've spent in that specific spot growing and developing their skills. How does that show itself? Tyre wear is the big one. So for Rehan, raw pace, absolutely. It's all right there. He's developing himself as a driver. Now he's got the elbows out. Now he's learned a few things. He's learned who he can rub and who he can race against. He's learned what a mistake looks like. What's the punishment? How deep can I go? How much can I push this apron? Now he's starting to develop and come on with a bit of maturity as a driver. And I was talking to Tom Freer recently. He said this really good story. If you go back a couple of years and you look at Griffin Gardner, lent on a lot of people, was a very aggressive driver, made mistakes, roughed people up. Last year was Griffin Gardner's coming of age. Look what he did with it.
Yeah, indeed. Griffin Gardner is the reigning V8SCOPS champion, and what a drive it was. Leonage just going over final preparations in his pit box. Youngest driver in the field with a minute left in practice. We saw James Scott running around as well, and we go back to him here. You might notice that there's a new livery on the Lobs Esports cars. They initially carried Speed Cafe sponsorship, but with Jack Doohan increasing his presence in sim racing with the likes of Vermilion Motorsports, the Doohan OK logo is now on the Lobs Esports cars, and I've got to say that is a very nice livery indeed.
Also, we just talked about Griffin Gardner actually really conveniently. I'm not 100% sure if you're actually across this thus far yet, Reese. Team changes. They've just happened. What a spicy time of year. We've had a very tumultuous... I can't recall a time period where in the recent history we've had this much shuffling. A lot's gone on behind the scenes in terms of the sim racing in Australia. We've seen that breakdown in terms of supercars partnerships with Altice Sports Australia, and we went, oh, well, those guys will all just find new homes. Well, they did. And then things shuffled again. Whenever that happens, you always... It takes some time for it to settle, right? You don't just throw your sugar in your coffee and then it disperses itself. No, you get in there and you stir it. Well, what's happened with the supercars community is we just thrown the sugar in the coffee. It all settled, and then somebody went, nah, that's not enough sugar. I need to add some more sugar in it. That's effectively what's happened with this team shuffling.
Yeah, indeed. Massive, massive changes. I mean, it seems like the Australia-New Zealand sim racing community is in a constant state of ebb and flow with the team changes. I remember some years ago when Trans-Tasman Racing expanded their driver lineup, and a few of those guys, such as Maloney, are still with them today. I think that's the last time I remember a huge shake-up in team allegiances and the like. But we'll leave that discussion behind for now, as qualifying is beginning. The first group is out. Positions 16 to 32 in pre-qualifying, plus the split 2 podium. Dylan O'Shea for 9.5 Sim Sports leading the charge here, followed by Aidan Gale for BE Electrical Race on Oz. This is a good opportunity to see what kind of pace these guys can keep up in these conditions. It's pretty hot out there, reasonably warm track, 39 degrees Celsius.
Yep, nice warm track, right? So now you got to get yourself in order. You'll have a little bit of time to set yourself. Have a look at that wind. The wind's changed now again as well. Before, the wind was coming from the northwest. It's nearly done a 180. It's coming now from the southeast. Not quite as gusty as well. So track conditions going to change quite significantly. There's only 3 drivers that'll really have the feel of what those conditions look like, and those are the guys that are qualifying across. But and a big opportunity for Aidan Gale here. This is his debut. This guy's only spent 6 months, less than 6 months in this car, and he's already cracked into SCOPS Split 1. What's he going to look like in another 6 months? We're talking about Rehan Leonage had to get himself shuffled in and making sure that he got the feel of it. Well, this is a driver that's adapting to the car. Zach Rattray White's another perfect example. A lot of skill in another car, shuffles himself into the supercar, really acquaints himself with the car. There's a couple of drivers in this field that I look up and down and I go, these guys are going to be someone in about 12 months' time.
Indeed, SCOPS is one of the most significant proving grounds for drivers up and coming in the Australia-New Zealand sim racing scene. Well, first lap begins for the number 19 of Dylan O'Shea, a very spectacular driver. He's known for being quite aggressive with his moves. 9.5 Sim Sports is his team, formerly of simrigs.com DPR. Dylan, one of the drivers I'm most interested in watching as time goes on, because as time goes on, he's dialed back that aggression in places. He's become a bit more of a consistent, clean competitor, and it's been really good to see what kind of laps he can put down in a qualifying session.
Yeah, loses the rear end of the car. Oh, he hung on to that just barely. So, and you're right. And one of the things that, again, I talked to a few people about, and I talk a lot about Dylan O'Shea because he's one of those drivers I've got a little bit of history with, and I know this guy quite reasonably well. Don't know him specifically quite that well, but I know what his past looks like in terms of his driving capability. And again, same sort of thing. I was talking to Tom Freer about a number of different drivers, a number of different people up and down the field. He's having a bit of an expression session, I think, at the moment, trying to get that power down back to the pit lane. But the big thing for Dylan O'Shea is, when I spoke to Tom about it, he said, that's the right place for him. I want to see him at 9.5. And the real reason for that is, look who's in charge over there, Sean McNamara, and look at the other driver that's just gone away from 9.5. He wanted to see him alongside Griffin Gardner, learning from him and really oozing that information, that transformation in terms of the way they drive the cars and everything around there. And I think Dylan's improved as a driver as a result of it. He's still going to have a few relationships that are a little bit tentative and a couple of drivers up and down the field that don't like him. That comes with being an aggressive driver, but he'll wear that in, could become a really classy guy in a couple of years.
Yeah, indeed. Looking forward to seeing further developments for Dylan O'Shea. But he abandoned that first run in the qualifying session. Currently, Michael Taliancic, who is now in Synergy Sim Racing after some time spent at Altus Esports, Altus Australia. Man, that was such an interesting sequence of events, wasn't it? Those team changes. Taliancic, the leader of the former Pursuit Sim Racing team. Then when Altus Esports decided to expand after Pursuit unfortunately collapsed, they all became Altus Australia, and then Altus fell off the wagon a little bit, and now all of those drivers have gone to the likes of Vermilion, the likes of Synergy in the case of Taliancic. Very interesting indeed. But Taliancic, fortunately, has still kept his signature neon green.
Yeah, he has, and this is a really, really interesting time period for Michael Taliancic. If you look at him over the last sort of 12 to 18 months, he's had a lot go on. For a driver that's over 40, he actually went and did an apprenticeship. He went back and taught him, and he was trying to manage teams, and all of that happened through that period of him where he's, working for a little bit cheaper rates, working longer hours, really trying to cut his teeth in a new job, new role. Moved as well, big move as well. I believe he was living in Perth and moved back to New Zealand. So for Michael, he went through this incredibly tough period in terms of his life, and the team broke down all at the same time. I mean, you're throwing a lot. At that point in your time as a person, you're really trying to work hard. You're really trying to throw everything in. It's just not working. I think this is a new lease on life for Tally. Right now, he's not at the best that he's been in the last year. I've certainly seen him drive better, but I'm not looking at right now. I'm looking at what I want Tally to be in 6 months' time. This is the first time we've seen Tally driving as a driver, not a team owner, in 6-7 years?
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be difficult for me to overcome, because I've always seen Tally as, an owner-driver sort of setup when it comes to teams. So he doesn't have to worry about managing a team in the midst of trying to improve his own driving. Now he's with Synergy, which is one of the top and most enduring teams in Australian sim racing for very good reason. It will be interesting to see how he develops from here.
Yeah, and again, that wasn't an easy decision as well, just bringing him on board, and he came on board with that team with Job Stewart as well, racing Super 2s. So that worked out really, really well, that new partnership. We sort of saw a little bit of it, somewhat a similar initial relationship between Bo Albert and the ERT team, whereby he wasn't necessarily a part of that team initially, but there was a mechanical working relationship to try and qualify Bo back into Logitech. And that worked out, and then you put 2 and 2 together. It was a little bit like that for both Michael Taliancic and Job Stewart as well. Now they've put the pieces together. Now they're happy with it. I think that relationship's just about locked in for both Tally and Job. And I think the big key is that they wanted to get back to really enjoying their sim racing. When I spoke to Job, very, very quiet spoken guy, a little bit more shy, very, plays his cards a little bit closer to his chest, but I've got a lot of time a day for Tally. I think he's just an awesome person. He's done a lot for sim racing, and I really, when I say that I want to see him, as a commentator, no, that's actually not my commentators talking. That's me as a person going, I really like Tally. I want to see what he's capable of just as a driver.
Indeed. We can't forget that Michael Taliancic, as the leader of Pursuit Sim Racing, helped to facilitate the rise of Andrew Gilliam, who could potentially be joining the same team that Griffin Gardner is joining this week. It'll be interesting to see what kinds of developments result from that. But for now, there is a qualifying session to conclude here. Gilliam, of course, definitely confirmed at Lobs Esports. And, honestly, the likes of Jared Filsell, the likes of Luke Rosella, Dylan Rudd, James Scott, that's going to be an incredible team to go to, at least. That's the rumor mill circulating at the moment.
If I was to walk up and down the pit lane, Reese, and all of a sudden walk to you, Chris Hogshead is actually going to pull out a cracking lap, go to the top of the timing towers as Matt Morris is struggling a little bit. But good to see Matt Morris, by the way, qualified into Split 1, didn't have to race his way in this week. That gives... Oh, Paul!
Ouchie. That's going to invalidate the lap right at the end. No surprise to see Paul Young go straight to the pit lane after that.
Yeah, just a few interesting notes. And you say rumour mill's swirling, and the response I'll say to that, Reese, is, well, have a look at where Lobs are right now in terms of their driver capabilities. Have a look at what they've done. I think Dylan Rudd's taken a step forward this year, and look at where he came from as well. He was alongside Griffin Gardner, so I think that's a natural partnership, a natural relationship that works quite well. The secondary thing about that is, if I walked up to you and said, there's a Red Bull seat with your name on it right now, would you tell me no?
Yeah, it's an interesting question indeed, isn't it?
So, take that at salt. And the other side of the coin is when we consider esports, which sim racing effectively is, versus real world racing, there's a lot more stringent contacts. There's a lot more money tied up into it, to be frank. So the stringency and the locking in terms of contracts, and why we don't see drivers jump ship mid season, it does happen, just very rarely, right? And the reason for that is the money that's involved. So there's a lot more to gain, a lot more to lose. Yeah, there's a little bit less to lose in terms of sim racing, but that also comes with freedom, and that comes with that freedom to shuffle around. It's not as if you've got to go and build a complete new car for someone to jump into, right? So
yeah, the sunk costs are nowhere near as much as in real world motorsports. So yeah, you're right, there is a bit more freedom to contend with in a space like this. In any case, Group 1 qualifying almost done. We're only going to have a few minutes remaining on the clock here, and as we've been talking about the behind-the-scenes shenanigans, you know, things are looking good for the likes of Chris Coxhead right now. You know, he got a really good run at Winton last round for V8SCOPS race 208, matching his number, and now currently sitting provisional P1 of the drivers that have set times in this first group of qualifying. Kurt Stenberg as well in the midst of this session. Stenny is, well, he remains the most experienced driver in V8SCOPS history. He's going to be making race start 179 tonight. Yeah,
next time out be 180 should he make the dance. So look, I mean, opportunity is always in the water, and like we said earlier, Stenny's one of the things that comes with being an experienced campaigner is you know what the strategy is going to do. You already know what you can potentially do. Yeah, it's really, really interesting from that perspective. You know, strategy's just basically be a locked-in perspective for him. You know, sometimes you just see that opportunity that lurks in the water, but by and large, you know, it's going to go to the way that it's played out previously. Sometimes you see that new factor, but you want an experienced campaigner in terms of how to race this car around this sort of a venue. You know, it's one where mistakes are punished significantly more, and when you've got the most experienced driver out there, well, numbers say you should be a lot more successful.
Yeah, speaking of experience, Thomas Hins, 129.58 on that lap. That's going to move him up to 6th spot in the standings. Beautiful stuff from Hinsey, who was recently confirmed the champion of AOG's Fixed Indy Australia League. Hinsey, a very skilled driver. We don't see him very often in V8s, but he always makes an appearance at the Enduros and the occasional appearance at a regular round 2. Chris Coxhead, also of Team Jinx Shifters, is at the moment making his way down to turn 7 on another lap. We'll see if this one is successful for him, if he can increase the gap there to Dylan O'Shea, who's put on an excellent lap there just a few moments ago, only 0.04 of a second separating those two at the top of the standings.
Yeah, quality laps from both of those guys as well. And for Dylan O'Shea, I think he'll be a little bit upset and annoyed with that lap. I think there's a little bit more in the water for him. But when you say, you know, it's the back end of the 16, right? It's the last few drivers that, it's the top end of the back 16. He's just barely missed out creeping into that front 15 or so drivers as well. Then actually this is probably not a bad qualifying lap for him, but I think he will expect more. I think Dylan O'Shea, when you look at him, I think he looks at himself and goes, I'm a top 10 driver and I should be a regular top 10 driver. So,
yeah, indeed. Here comes Jamie Dyke. Oh, he's a bit crossed up there coming out of the final couple of turns. One of the drivers from Split 2 that have made their way into this session. Shastanerf is in there as well. And we'll wait and see whether or not they can make any improvements. Blackburn currently sitting a little bit down the order, 16th place for him. Shastanerf easily the most successful so far of our Split 2 podium, who have all decided, yes, we'll go again here in Split 1.
Yeah, difficult night for them, but you know, you look at Blake Delaney and you go, he's coming in quite fresh of the fishy drivers, and Blake's always been quick and always been up in at this point. And I think one of the bigger factors for Blake Delaney is certainly time and the amount of time he can put into practicing. I believe he's away quite often for work, so you know that also takes away from his potential. But when he can show up and when he can put a strong foot forward, you definitely see that when he's put the work in. He's one of the really, really good standard in terms of driving, and a lovely bloke to boot.
Absolutely. Checkered flag flies in Group 1 of qualifying here at Belle. The drivers currently on hot laps will be able to finish them. So we'll see what Blake Delaney can do from 14th spot provisionally. Thomas Hinz back in the pits. I can't see whether, Chris Coxhead is not running anymore. Dylan O'Shea is out there, but I don't think he crossed the line in time to start his lap. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on the likes of Blackburn and Delaney, etc., to see what they can do. So same for Brenton Nitschke for Frog Leap Juiced Racing. Out of the final corner he comes, and he's going to abandon that lap. It seems Matt Morris was the last car across the line in time, so we'll focus on him after we see how Blake Delaney's lap ends up.
Runs towards the back end of things and starts to try and get it turned back in, drive off the last corner and run to the line. Don't know if it's necessarily going to be an improvement for Blake Delaney, but he's certainly cracking on and giving it a red hot go. 29.885 does move him up a spot as well, so reasonably good lap for him. And Matt Morris has abandoned his lap. Dylan O'Shea's off the last corner, but the lap's actually not eligible. Do you know what? He missed getting to the line to start this lap and have this lap count by 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
That's got a sting.
It was an improvement too.
Yeah, it's such a shame for Dylan O'Shea. He will not be fastest of Group 1 qualifying. That honour will go to Team Jinx Shifters, Chris Coxhead, Mike Taliancic, provisional P3, Kale and Stenberg will round out our top 5. Good stuff from Thomas Hinz as well. Gets to 0.04 of a second behind Stenny. Young Loxton Wallace and Logan Barnett are going to round out our top 10. Behind them, we have Synergy Sim Racing's number 7, Brady Baldwin. Our Split 2 winner, James Chastaneuf, putting in a very good case for himself there, only 0.5 of a second behind Coxhead. Yeah,
and then, look at the guys a little bit deeper in the field. Brady Baldwin from James Chastaneuf as well. Chasty manages to qualify 12th out of that group. We're towards the rear end of the field. Tyler Blackburn just beats out Jamie Dyke all the way down in 16th and 17th as well. Ben Morris is going to come from the rear of the field, though. 2 seconds off the pace, that is guaranteed to be the last row of the grid. He will be the last qualifier.
Yeah, unfortunate there for Ben Morris and the number 43. Phase 4, they've had some really good results and they certainly have great potential. They've just been struggling a little bit over the last season or so. Hopefully things turn around for them soon. So Q2 is going to start at 17 minutes remaining in the session, and it looks like that's just happened. So our top drivers are out now. The Vermilion Esports pair leading the way of Zach Rattray-White and Jacob O'Reilly. Interesting point as well, Scott. Jay was talking to us before the broadcast. He'd been running some numbers on SimSpeed's broadcasting stats. Zach Rattray-White is actually the driver that has made the most appearances in SimSpeed broadcasts this year.
Yeah, wasn't there another stat of the 273 broadcasts with SimSpeed or something this year already, and we're halfway through the year?
Yeah, 250 something. I think was 254.
So we're actually at greater than a broadcast a day.
Yeah. That's incredible, isn't it? I mean, the expansion of SimSpeed's directing capabilities with Dan Yeaman jumping on for directing duties in the last year or so has really expanded SimSpeed's portfolio, and it's amazing to be a part of it. SimSpeed, of course, very active all the way to the end of this year. And if you like what you're seeing, chuck us a sub on YouTube, like us on Facebook. We're SimSpeed Esports Network on that platform, SimSpeed TV on X as well. But for now, we'll keep our eyes on Zach Rattray-White, the number 117. He's been on the move up and up the order ever since Vermilion changed tack and decided to go for a big old expansion, bring in some very fast drivers indeed. Here it comes, the start of the lap here at Belle Isle. Immediately on the brakes, coming into turn 1. beautiful sweepers to start the lap. But once again, Scott, it's the bump on the exit of turn 2 that will help define the lap.
Yeah, and have a look at the car. It looked reasonably stiffly sprung. There was a little bit of a bobble as he got to the middle of the Cresta 2. So really trying to get that car planted, push the tyres as hard as you possibly can. Remember, light car, not a lot of fuel loaded on board at the moment as well for these qualifying runs. That's interesting to note. When you see them come through there, they're going to look a lot more lazy when they get into the race as well.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, so close to the wall there. Almost 0x, almost invalidating the lap. Rattray White will be hoping that that wasn't enough to completely invalidate the lap. Sector's looking good so far. This is going to be a good banker if this lap ends up remaining valid. Hard on the brakes at turn 7. He tips it in. Was almost firing it towards the inside of the corner there, which you need to do at turn 7. The main goal at that corner is keeping it out of the wall on the exit.
Oh, I thought it was picking up the throttle and trying to get drive. But in terms of things, what I'm liking about this is have a look at how much of the track he's using at the moment. There is very, very literal millimetres in terms of where he's placing that car. So, was that a brush? That might have been a brush.
It might have been, yeah.
So, you know, in terms of using all the real estate, he's been up against the barrier a lot, and that says that there's a driver that's reasonably on form, is that they're using all the laps. So lap was still valid, reasonably good, 29.3, pops out, he's the fastest, he's beat all the guys that were out in that first run by 0.02 of a second.
Brady Myers and then James Scott immediately into the 128s. That's fantastic pace from those guys. Leonage up to 3rd spot. Dylan Rudd up into 4th. Jordan Ross for Synergy Sim Racing also looking very good at this round. P4 for the time being, but, well, Lobs Esports on top. James Scott is certainly going for it, isn't he? He's been the man to beat all season.
Yeah, I mean, he really is at the moment, you know, in terms of the car. And when I made that Red Bull Racing comparison, there's a very specific reason why. When you look at the number of drivers that are wanting to work with this outfit, there's a very, very strong reason. What you do by moving into this outfit is you challenge yourself by surrounding yourself with people that are better than you. That's such a big key to becoming a better driver. If you're sitting down and you're looking at your own data and you're going, oh, look, that lap looked really, really good. Where's the extra 3/10 gone? When the 3/10 are in all the micro little things that you're doing, and you need an experienced eye to pick those all out. So, you know, James Scott, Jared Fieldcell, those names, they've been there in terms of their level of performance for such a long period of time. For the drivers that are jumping up in there, it's going to take a couple of rounds, but they're pulling themselves forward as well.
And if you're interested in a stat for James Scott as the run comes to an end for these drivers who've just set their first laps, 5 out of 5 for round wins for James Scott this season. At this time, a perfect score from the opening rounds of 2024. We'll see if he can hold on to that here, though. I think if there's any round where that run for James Scott will be interrupted, it's this one.
Yeah, one of the factors we haven't actually discussed as yet is I was just thinking about it. If you're going to say that the order can get shaken up a little bit any time throughout the season, this is probably your lottery round. You know, when you go to ovals, everyone goes to Vegas and they go, look, we're at Vegas. You've got to gamble to win big in Vegas. Got to gamble on Detroit, Belle Isle in terms of these things. A little bit out of position at the wrong period of time. Car snaps a little bit on your mid-corner just because you fractionally overbalance that car. Round done. How about this driver that's been on screen, though? I think this is the best Blake Warboys has ever driven. I think he's having the season of his life. He's driving out of his skin. I got the opportunity to sit down and talk him through and teach him a little bit of oval stuff in the Xfinity cars just recently, and he really soaks it up like a sponge. All good drivers have to. That's how you learn. That's how you improve. But I think Blake, and he sounds calm behind the wheel. He sounds settled. And when you have a look around him, who's he got to work with? Well, there's some really good engineers and some guys around there, but in terms of pace over at WKMP, he's sort of sitting out there a little bit isolated, a little bit on his own. And for a driver to do that with his level of pace and scrap forward is incredibly difficult to do. That says this is a guy with oodles of talent. I'm really curious if he ever starts working with another team, if he could pop a few extra places forward. Then again, you know, maybe that's the best part about it. You really zeroed in. You kind of focused on how you drive the car and the way you drive the car to get the most out of it. Sometimes driving with teams doesn't necessarily go the way you think.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen many cases of that over the years in SCOPS and the wider community as well. So, yeah, you never know. Blake Warboys, he's been with WKMP for a very long time now, through thick and thin, and he's basically the lead driver at the team now. And I would argue that WKMP needs Blake Warboys, because he'll be helping out with the setup work. He'll be teaching about driving technique and the like. He's got fantastic pace. He was the NTE Series champion a couple of years ago, fixed V8 Series, but the open setup V8 SCOPS Series up against these guys, like you say, he is on the up and up at the moment. New laps have begun for our front runners. Scott, Myers, Leonage, Ross, Rudd, they are all on new hot laps at the moment. James Scott being followed there by, I believe that is Dylan Rudd just behind him. Myers, meanwhile, he is on an absolute charge at the moment, coming into the third and final sector, but I think he's gone a bit deep in turn 7 there.
Yeah, and that's the margin, right? He's deep, but how deep was he? He missed the apex by not all that much, and maybe that's just a downshift. Didn't necessarily gel all that well. You had to go and reach for it a little bit again. The balance was a fraction off. The track temp changed just a little bit. There was a touch of extra breeze, and you missed the apex. And I'm talking by a touch of extra breeze. I mean a touch of extra breeze means you miss that apex. Maybe he just got a better drive off of turn 5 than he was expecting. And he went to go for the braking zone, and he's just carried an extra 2Ks worth of speed. 2Ks, you'll miss the braking mark. You brake at the same point. That's about how much you'll miss the apex by.
Yeah, exactly. That's the margin for error we're talking about here at Belle Isle. The top 3 all set purple first sectors. James Scott will improve by a few hundredths, and Luke Rosella up to P3. Didn't set a lap in the first run, but man, that's worked out beautifully for the number 55. Myers will remain in second. Dylan Rudd will improve up to third spot. Kenneth Latta as well for Fishy will move up to 24th place. Ross improving to 5th as, oh dear, Jordan Ross's teammate at Synergy, Brenton Hobson, seems to be having some trouble with the front left.
Yeah, unfortunately for car pace, that requires to be a little bit more attached than that one was to go well. But yeah, look, I mean, have a look at Brady Myers as well. He's been around, been really, really interesting. The big... So this is going to tell exactly what happened, actually. So it's just wide coming onto the back straight.
Ouch.
And, Dylan Rudd and Luke Rosella are a really interesting grouping to watch, because have a look at where they were last year, and they had flash in the pan speed. And what I mean by that is you could show up at 1 or 2 racetracks a year, and they were brilliantly quick, had a great setup, drove the car very, very well, but season-long performance was a real problem for them. They'd be here at, let's just pick round 1, and all of a sudden, for the next 5 rounds, they go missing. It's like there was a completely different driver that you're looking at. I think one of the bigger keys is what we've seen with this partnership between Rosella and Rudd, and moving into the Lobs Esports guys and working with Phil Sell, Van Gisbergen, all the guys and all the offerings that they've got over there, is you're seeing that flash in the pan speed, you're seeing it become far more consistent and faster at the same time. So not only have they gotten better, they're more consistent. And realistically, winning one race in a season, you can go, yeah, I won one race in a season. You're never a championship threat. I think even back end of this season, I think one of the big things for those guys is I think they will start to think about themselves, I'm a championship threat. Not quite there yet. Season's a little bit too far gone for them to actually come through and be a threat this year, but next year is a big target for those guys.
Yeah, of course, this is the first real season of racing for Lobs Esports, and they're already looking ridiculously quick, but you get the feeling they're still just preparing for a proper full-on assault in 2025. Really looking forward to what is yet to come from those newly liveried cars. I was too used to seeing black, white, and green at the front of the field. Now I'm going to have to get used to seeing blue and red. Look at that improvement for Blake Warboys, meanwhile. Just got up to P6, set a 29.2. That's the kind of pace that we were talking about earlier when we were focusing on him.
Yeah, that's a lot better. Really, really enjoying that. How about Ewan Baker? And the other thing to think about Ewan Baker, he's a guy that drives 10 different cars on the regular, right? So a guy that doesn't spend a lot of time in the V8 supercar, what that does do though is it means that you adapt really quickly as a driver, and that was the other key. When you mentioned about Blake Warboys and what he's capable of, when you mention a fix it up series, what does that do as a driver when everyone's locked in the same machinery? You've got to change the way that you drive that car to get the speed out of it. Nothing's going to change. You can't reach in there and change a bar. All you've got is the brake bias and then the way that you press the pedals and turn the steering wheel, really. So what that does is you might end up with a car that's quite pointy in the front end. It's supremely good under brakes. So you carry that brake a little bit further into the corner. You've got to drive it a lot more trail brakey than you necessary. Sometimes you like to get on the power in that mid-corner, stabilize it with the throttle. So what that says about Blake Warboys is it's all about the way that he drives the car, right? He can adapt his driving style to a different car really well. Then you pair that with good engineering, that's when you get a really good driver, or a driver that's actually quite good at adapting himself across 5 or 10 different cars. Ewan Baker drives a bunch of different cars, adapts himself to the car, adapts himself to the platform each and every time. So a really good driver. Again, what he needs around him, good engineering. You pick that up, better driver comes out as a result.
Yeah, so many moving parts and what makes a successful driver, be it sim or real world. Speaking of success, well, Brady Myers, a former V8 SCOPS champion himself. Really fantastic job from Brady over the past few seasons. You know, I remember seeing him come up with TTL, and you know, after that team folded, he went to Trans-Tasman and just kept going from strength to strength. He doesn't appear in V8 SCOPS as much as he used to, and you can say that for a lot of the Trans-Tasman racing squad, in fact, but it's always nice to see them back here to remind us why they have so much success in this series.
Yeah, it is. And look at Brady Myers as well, you know. He's loving life at the moment. He's dealing with a few different little bits and pieces. They always say, you know, getting a puppy is probably the test of whether you're right to have children. Well, he's dealing with a puppy at the moment. So I wonder how life's going in the Myers household.
Yeah, I gotta wonder too. He's certainly zeroed in on the circuit at the moment, isn't he? As is James Scott, who, you know, I look at James Scott driving around and I don't see any real aggression from him. You know, he's got the kind of driving style as Rosella goes P3 and Scott improves on his provisional pole time. I look at James Scott driving and I don't see any trace of real, you know, like driving hard. Like, obviously he's driving hard, otherwise he wouldn't be as pacey as he is, but he's able to manage that. He's able to keep it lovely and smooth through the corners. There's nothing from the outside that betrays how hard he's driving that car.
That's a very good thing. That's difficult to pick up as well. One of the drivers I tend to use as a really good example of that is Scott Gamble. Points the car very straight off the exit, really relaxed. There's very little jitter in his wheel. It's part of the reason, again, I like to attack the wheel and really move it side to side. You do that for a bunch of laps around this place, you're going to be exhausted really quickly. But yeah, that's the difference, isn't it? When you see a driver that's really relaxed and comfortable, what that means is they're not wearing through the tyre. And the other thing in terms of qualifying pace, the tyre's not gone 3/4 of the way through the lap. That means you can ooze the pace out of it through that last sector and really make sure that you're maximising. When you hear Formula One drivers talk about the tyre's gone, we had to look after the tyre in the first half of the lap to get it out of the back end. That's what they're really talking about, is I had to drive the car nice and smoothly, not overcook and not rotate it in. And he's not chasing pace. He's not chasing pace in the braking zone. He's not chasing to get back to that throttle nice and early because he was on the brake early. You're right. Just really nice, smooth, and settled. I think that's a lot of Van Gisbergen and the engineers that got going in and around that, guys. The way that they talk about and set this car up is supreme. And the other big thing about these guys, the Lobs Esports guys, they like to run a really low wing car. Has to have good mechanical base for you to trim more wing off it than everyone around you. The other benefit of that, you can overtake more cars in a straight line.
Exactly. And, you know, around this circuit, guess where the best passing opportunities are? The end of the longest straights. So a little less wing and you'll be able to get that done. But yeah, like you say, with a good mechanical base for the car, mechanical grip is paramount at a circuit like this with so many bumps and so many slow corners. it is tempting to pack on a bit more downforce for these cars just to stabilize the rear end and get yourself a better run through the corners, but that could fall to your detriment when it comes time for the race.
Well, in terms of mechanical base, you've got a lot of different ways to attack that as well. You can do it with your toe, your camber, but springs is a big factor in these cars, and those roll bars obviously as well. And why are those so important around here? Your bumps. You have to have a reasonably soft sprung car so that they can absorb those impacts. And the reason for that is if you've got end of qualifying results. We'll talk about this when we get to the race.
Yeah, indeed we will. Track temperature dropping. Coming into the first race of the night for Split 1, an absolutely masterful run from James Scott, who starts on pole position alongside Brady Myers for Trans-Tasman Racing. Scott's teammate, Luke Rosella and Dylan Rudd, will line up on the second row, and Phoenix Racing Team's Rayhan Leonage will round out the top 5, starting alongside Vermilion Esports' Zach Rattray White. Blake Warboy's fantastic performance, 7th spot in the end alongside Jordan Ross, who is the top Synergy car in the field, joined by Ewan Baker. Jake O'Reilly will round out the top 10.
Yeah, moving it back to the first row outside the top 10. Chris Cox at that time was just barely not good enough to get inside the top 10. Misses out on that by 12 thousandths of a second. Dylan Pereira off to his outside. Dylan O'Shea and Ken Latta are going to make up row number 7. And then in behind them, Michael Taliancic off alongside of Jamie Stovald. From row number 9 of the Gribbs is going to be Robbie Gibbs off alongside of, Jamie Stovald off alongside of Robbie Gibbs will be row number 9 of the grid. Then on row number 10, rounding out our top 20 is going to be Aidan Kale and Kurt Stenberg.
Thomas Hinz in the number 52 starts alongside Paul Young on the 11th row, with Brett Loxton and Justin Wallace 23rd and 24th. Good to see Team Jinx shifters back in V8SCOPS Split 1. Logan Barnett, Evolution Racing Team, starts alongside Brady Baldwin, the head administrator of Oceanic Dirt Sim Events. James Chastanerf, our Split 2 winner, will start at our 27th place alongside Fishy Motorsports' Blake Delaney. And then we have Matt Morris and Brenton Nitschke rounding out the top 30. Tyler Blackburn and Jamie Dyke, they were your other top 3 in Split 2. They'll start ahead of Ben Morris and Jake Maloney. Second place in the championship, apparently doing a last to first challenge. Thomas Freeman will be the last car to take to the grid in 35th place, with Sam Blacklock joining race control from this round onwards for V8SCOPS. Good to see Sam back in the mix, if not as a driver, then helping to keep the show running.
Yeah, and I think they're going to have a busy night at the office, I think, here tonight. Just, that's just how it looks, right? So, yeah, let's talk about car setup now, because it's quite important. Bumps, got to handle bumps well. What happens is if you have a stiffly sprung car, it can't absorb the bump. It just jams the shock up, bounces that tyre up and off the ground. When you haven't got a tyre in the ground, all of a sudden you're running around a little bit like a tripod. You go from 4 tyres worth of grip down to 3 tyres worth of grip. So the car has to be reasonably, your dampers have got to be reasonably soft so that they can absorb that impact, keep the tyres pressed into the ground so you've got maximum amounts of grip. What that means then, stiffness in terms of car keeps the car pressed into the road. You've got to adapt for that somewhere else. And another big key, you mentioned downforce as well. Downforce is a really interesting topic. You've definitely got to have enough of it on, but the only thing you can adjust in these cars, rear wing. You can't adjust the front wing. All it does is adjust the balance. You slap on a bunch of rear wing, raises the front end of the car up, so you've got to adjust it with rate.
Yeah, let's see how that works. Various settings throughout this field as the first race of Split 1 is go. An absolutely bottled start from Luke Rosella. Wheel spin off the line. He will fall down to 9th place by the time they get to turn 1, side by side with Ewan Baker. Disastrous there for one of our Lobs Esports cars. The other two occupying 1st and 3rd. Brady Myers with a strong start, holding on to 2nd place as the moves will start to get on here. Blake Warboys gets past Jordan Ross, defending the position there, and oh no, Rosella's in the wall, and that has involved Dylan O'Shea as well, losing his front bumper. That car is not turning. Oh, we're already going to have a potential tow request. Oh, definitely now. Huge crash.
Oh, look at the car that's just been stripped off Brenton Nitschke's car.
Wow. Okay, yeah, this is going to be a safety car for sure.
100%.
He's not going to be able to get that going.
Well, O'Shea can't move. O'Shea's got nothing left. He's got no engine. He's got no tyre on that left-hand front of that thing. And all I think of all of a sudden is Chaz Moss at Taupo. Or Torpor, sorry, say that incorrectly. Torpor. Remember when they didn't bolt that one on correctly? That one's self-inflicted from Nitschke.
Yep. Oh dear. Safety car out on lap 1, and the compulsory pit stop window has been delayed. So we won't be seeing drivers taking their CPS under this safety car. Nitschke's still trying to get that car moving. I don't think he realizes that one of the rear wheels is missing, but it looks like he has now, and has given up on returning that car to the pits. What a chaotic run through turn 3 that was. The field is neutralized at the end of the first lap, and we'll get another view as to what caused this. So actually, it looks like O'Shea almost got into the back of Rosella there. They didn't make contact, but Rosella was just too deep, cleaned up one of the Phoenix cars, and then Brenton Nitschke arriving on the scene. O'Shea will go straight on into the barriers here, and Nitschke, I don't know what was going on there. He was trying to give space. I don't think he realized O'Shea was stopped on the exit.
No, yeah, and it's blind. Remember, it's blind. You've got a wall of cars, so you'd have to go to Nitschke's cockpit and sort of just watch him as he comes through that corner. I guarantee you, he's had no visibility. That's a really, really odd incident, though, because if you actually have a look at the relative pace of Rosella and O'Shea as they went down into turn 3, they're actually slower than the cars around them. So they've had a problem when they've got down to turn 3. I wonder, this will be Nitschke's on board. So there's the splitter, bounces over the fence. At least that one's out of the way. No spectators harm.
Oh yeah, he had no time to react.
And he was in hot as well. Something's wrong, because that's 3 cars in the space of 2 corners that have missed a corner. Now, Brenton Nitschke's not a common driver that makes it into these top split races. You could say a mistake a little bit more likely for him, but you don't see Dylan O'Shea and you don't see Luca Rosella both make that mistake. No. Something further has happened. I reckon it might be wind. They might have picked up a little bit of tailwind going down in there and they just couldn't pull the car up. Something happened there out of the ordinary for 2 cars to make the same mistake.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting that the track temperature dropped. It's down to 36 degrees Celsius now, so you never know. They might have been expecting the track to be a little hotter for those tyres to heat up a little more in the braking zone. And don't forget, Rosella was already dealing with overheated rear tyres from spinning up the wheels on the start, so that might have affected his braking performance.
Yeah, Rosella definitely. He would have not had a lot of grip, but O'Shea's a little bit of a, there's just more in this one. So have a look at Rosella. So have a look at Rosella here. So he puts his brakes on, but have a look at everyone else. See how everyone else is deeper into the corner? And then the car just doesn't turn. So whether they can phase it, what I can tell you about Luke Rosella lately, he had a massive pedal failure a little while ago in terms of they just completely and utterly stopped working. He had nothing that he could have done. One of that team's sponsors is Hybrid Racing Simulations out of Lismore. Actually got in contact, sent Luke Rosella a new set of pedals. Without that, his racing career for the next sort of little while was probably shut down and his season basically over. So he's adapting to a new higher end level of pedals and the adjustments. It's you got to get time behind the wheel, and Rosella's just not had the opportunity to get that time. And adapting to a fresh set of pedals, and adapting to a new team, and adapting to everything else that's gone on. He's had a very rough year. If you think back in terms of Logitech, he actually had to start from the rear end of the field because he just accrued so many incident points at Red Bull Ring. And then there's another one for Thomas Freeman because I also saw him limping back to the pits. His night's done as well.
Yeah, so he avoided the chaos on the outside there, but then he arrived on the scene of the crash between Nitschke and Dylan O'Shea and just got absolutely whacked there. So that's the reason why Nitschke's left rear wheel flew off. Was Thomas Freeman running into him. So yeah, look at him limping at the moment. That front left not connected to any other component on the car now. And see how much lock he's having to put on here through the corners. And the amount of left hand down. I don't think I've seen any incident result in as much steering offset as that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And what he's trying to do here is, remember we talked about progressive grids? So this is all about grid positioning for race number 2, because remember he started at the back of all these guys. So this is still an improvement, right? So long as he can keep circulating in this race and picks up a couple of results, picks up a couple of places, big thumbs up, that's actually an improvement for him. So that's what this one's actually about.
Oh, wow. Okay. we're going to reset for now. Get ready for potentially the safety car to come in soon. Yeah, it seems like we've already had the call for safety car to come in at the end of this lap. So we've had some huge issues for plenty of front-running drivers here today. We've lost O'Shea and Rosella for the time being. Further problems, it seems, for Thomas Freeman. Oh, man, it's just such a shame to see, but we'll have to reset now and get ready for this restart. Remember, the compulsory pit window has been delayed as a result of this safety car on the first lap of the race. So I get the feeling we're going to have to wait a couple of laps for the pit window to officially open as the Proven Energy Porsche Missionar enters the pit lane. The field is under the control of James Scott, and he is not going early. He's waiting until the last possible moment to get on the power and coordinate this start with his teammate Dylan Rudd, who immediately moves to the inside of Brady Myers coming into turn one, but Brady flings it in there and keeps it ahead for now.
Yeah. Look at the rotation though. So what that was all about was getting him offline, and it didn't. Rudd just didn't get the drive he was looking for. Leonage actually looks really, really quick. Leonage just forced the cover from Dylan Rudd now as they get down to the inside of turn number 3. And Leonage actually looks like he's got a really, really good car for straight line speed off of turn 2. Under brakes, good car as well.
Yeah, Leonage doing very well right now, sitting in 4th spot. You see how much he's focusing and how smooth he's being on the wheel as well. He's barely turning in at all there for turn 4. Fantastic stuff. He'll be helping out his tyre life as a result of that. Trying to preserve tyre temperature is the main thing in these cars. The tyres will last about 10 to 15 laps before you see a big fall off in pace, and it's not necessarily grip that falls off, they just get slower over time. So 10 to 15 laps, that's the number to keep in mind as the race goes on here. Compulsory pit stop at hand in a lap or so's time as Justin Wallace has a few adventures in the field. Okay, CPS window's been opened instantly. Good stuff. So let's see if anyone decides to jump in early.
Yeah, jump in, get out of the queue. The big thing that I'm saying, particularly for these guys, Jake Maloney will be one of the first takers. And the reason for that, he's got pace, doing a last to first challenge. When can you do the most overtakes? So what he'll do is if he jumps to the lane early, he'll gain a whole bunch of spots really, really quickly, and then he'll stall out later on when everyone else comes through. Oh, there's one taker, it's Delaney. Delaney died to the lane.
Okay, Blake Delaney, our first scheduled pit stop of the race. This will be interesting to see what the 08 can do from here on out. He'll probably be hoping for another safety car somewhere along the line so he can preserve those tyres. Jake O'Reilly for Vermilion Esports chasing down Ewan Baker for 8th place. This is the view from the back of the Synergy Mustang. Man, these cars are looking angry at the moment, aren't they? It's such a hard slog making your way around Belle Isle. You got to deal with the bumps, the slipperiness of the concrete, the barriers at the edge of every single corner. But if you can nail the exit like these guys seem to have done, the lap will come to you. I don't know if O'Reilly's going to have much of a run, but he'll certainly be piling the pressure on the number 34.
Yeah, and that's worth noting as well. And have a look at Jordan Ross. You know, again, he's been putting a lot of effort and a lot of different things lately for Jordan Ross, and it's just good to see him back out here and having good, strong results. I think if you look in terms of who's the weakest in front of this front grouping, oh, look at Matt Morris go.
Yeah, Matt Morris for Neuro Power up the inside of turn 11. That's one of the first times we've seen a pass be made successfully at that corner tonight. And for Aidan Cale, he's had to give up the position further to Tyler Blackburn, who finished second in Split 2 earlier tonight. Brilliant stuff.
Well, how often do you see a fastest lap on, I suppose, lap number 2? The reason for that was actually the restart was done fairly late, so they didn't have the momentum when they got to the control line. But yeah, look, in terms of things, we're actually seeing a number of cars back out and circulating at the moment. When I have a look at who's vulnerable, who looks a little bit weak, whoa, Rudd's driving that one beyond its limits as well. The drivers that look the weakest at the moment are Brady Myers and Zach Rattray White. But put this in the back of your mind, are they weak on the short run, or are they weak on the long run? This could be some tyre preservation right now.
Yeah, it could. You know, I mean, at this point, James Scott is running away with this. Myers, it seems, cannot match his pace right now, and he's probably taking it a little easier on the tyres. He can make that Commodore a little bit wider around the streets of Detroit to keep Dylan Rudd and Rehan Lienage behind. And I think, you know, when you talk about the psychological games for Rudd, that's going to affect him negatively, because he'll be wondering, look, how can I get past Brady here to try and catch up to James, and then we can execute a nice strategy at Lobs Esports. But then you've got the Phoenix Racing Team 79 behind him, absolutely pressuring him at the moment. Not as good of a run out of the last couple of corners there for Rehan, but he's still in the slipstream and he's still putting the pressure on. That's one distraction that Dylan Rudd won't want.
And just think about it, you've already talked about it, right? Undercut, overcut. Now we get into the team games. Now this is the really, really interesting stuff as Coxhead dives into the lane as well. One of the key factors in all of this debate and all this conversation that's going to go on is teammates. Who have you got around you? Who have you got that can assist you? Well, when you have a look at that front group, the only teammates that are really going on up there, James Scott and Dylan Rudd. Other than that, you've got TTR, Brady Myers, Dylan Rudd, Lobs. Again, Rehan Lienage, solo entry, hasn't really got anyone else to work with. Zach Rattray White, Vermilion, first of Vermilion car, sits in fifth. Blake Warboys, WKNP, on his own, as Hobbo's going to get down the inside of Robbie Gibbs. All these guys at the moment, the first real grouping of team cars you got together is Jordan Ross and Ewan Baker 7th and 8th, and then Hobbo down the inside gets to 10th. So that's the first time we got 3 cars on the road together.
Yeah, indeed. Kenneth Latta, we're right on board with. Look at Jake Maloney, though. Most positions gained by far. The last to first challenge is going pretty well for the 29.
Half the job done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the other half that's going to be more difficult, though, because Maloney still hasn't come into the pits yet, and I'm wondering how long he's going to last before he decides that the traffic in front of him isn't worth it and it's hurting his pace.
Interesting to note as well, for the drivers who are actually at the back end of the train and didn't have damaged cars, even though you can't clear a compulsory pit stop here for these guys is up on the jacks, drop it. There's actually no fuel drop that's required to, sorry, my apologies, 60% fuel tank. There is a fuel drop that's required to get home. I would have jumped in, filled that tank up. No one took that. Logan Barnett just ran wide at the last corner. He's going to dive to the lane as well.
Yeah, okay, so we're seeing drivers largely from the mid to lower field taking their early stops at the moment, and I think that's a smart decision. You know, if you're in the midst of the pack and you feel like you want to make your way forward, but there's just cars in front of you that are hurting your pace, jump into the pits, get that fresh rubber, you'll come out and clear air, you'll be able to get a massive undercut on them. And at a track like this, slippery concrete, hot track temperatures still around 37 degrees Celsius, the undercut will be very strong.
Yeah, and if we get another safety car, there'll be some guys that bolt on some fresh tyres, but they'll be towards the back end of the pack, which will spice things up. So the couple keys here is I actually don't think the pit stop that's required for these guys to get home, it's right on and about what the fuel window is. So if you're fuel saving, you're actually doing yourself a disservice. Safety car laps, disservice. Why? You need to make that... Oh, Wallace!
Oh dear. Yeah, falling down to 25th place. He'll come out and clear air ahead of, it looks like that's Thomas Freeman behind him, who's now a couple of laps down. Let's see what happened to him then. Was it contact with the Mustang here coming into turn 7? Or did he just run deep? Oh yeah, he looked a bit unstable. He tried to turn it in, but the grip just wasn't there.
Oh, how
nice
about
recovery,
that?
though.
That's a phenomenal recovery. He could have lost another 10 seconds sitting there trying to get that car spun back around again. That's actually really good car control.
Yeah, very nice indeed. Throwing caution to the wind just a little bit, but it worked out for him. So Jamie Dyke and Kurt Stenberg are the cars in the pits at the moment. Meanwhile, Jake O'Reilly succeeded in getting past Ewan Baker, now sits in 8th spot.
Yeah, and now that sort of starts to change things up a little bit, because that brings the Marine Esports guys, you're just going to see him just do a late flick to the inside. Ewan sort of sees that one coming and just goes, I'm probably a little bit weak here. I don't think I've got the skills to keep that one from happening.
Could also be tactical as well, you know, recognizing that O'Reilly is looking faster and just deciding to play the long game a little bit, see if O'Reilly can help him work his way further forward to race with his teammate Jordan Ross, the likes of Blake Warboys and Zach Rattray White. Maloney's now up 18 spots, and of course that's influenced by a few cars coming into the pits, but still a mammoth run up through the field for second place in the championship.
What you'll see from him here is he will try and get up to that next car. As soon as he gets to him, probably trigger the undercut. The reason for that, well, he's gained about as much as he can possibly gain on the road right now. You know, overtakes are not easy, they're quite difficult, but have a look at the run that he had back at Winton. The big thing about Maloney, he's got a lot of pace. But sometimes you're pushing yourself right through the most difficult slog of it. If he could just get 1-2 laps worth of undercut, probably jump 3 or 4 guys, but you want to use that free air that he's got right now because he's not getting held up.
Yeah, and you know, all of the work he's put through his tyres as Morris comes in. Maloney's last lap was a 1 minute 30.5. Now that is faster than basically everyone in front of him up until Blake Warboys in P6. James Scott, meanwhile, fastest car on track right now, still holds on to the fastest lap. 1 minute 30.009 was the last lap for our race leader, who's continuing to streak away from this trio. And have a look, Brady Myers has put a little more space between himself and Dylan Rudd now.
So remember what I was talking about? He was just chilling out the tyres. He probably took a look at James Scott and went, I'm not 100% confident. If the opportunity presents itself, I'll send it for sure. But at the same time, he would have been sitting there going, right now, I'm going to lock myself in a second. I'm just going to preserve these tyres. What happens in these sorts of cases, I really like to liken it back to NASCAR because it's quite similar in terms of the way the tyres go. A little bit different in terms of the metrics of how it goes off a little bit. But if you look after the tyres whilst maintaining your track position, all of a sudden you can respond a little bit later on. And Myers is taking a look around going, probably haven't got the pace for it. Let's protect these tyres. Let's lock in second place rather than trying to throw it down the inside and lose everything going for first.
Yeah, solid position for Brady Myers to be in at the moment. Just needs to consolidate it for now for the rest of the first stint, however long that will take. Robbie Gibbs, car number 2 for ERT, was chasing down Brenton Hobson, but we turn our attention to our split 2 winner, James Chastaneuf, as well as Aidan Cale, making their way into the pits here. So the leader of the cars that are pitted is Chris Coxhead. He's going to move past both of those guys and up into P20. I'm interested to see what Coxhead's progression is going to be like from here, because, yeah, he pitted as early as he possibly could, but he's going to be hurting towards the end. But how much is the question?
Yeah, and that's the big key. And look, in terms of overall times, he was okay in terms of qualifying. 11th place is actually a really good effort. But then he slipped a little bit, right? Those first few laps necessarily didn't go the way that he would have wanted them to. Well, he's got the opportunity here, and he is making time. He's making time of those cars he's around. A little bit of a mistake there, takes it out of the tyre. By the way, we're sneaking up on halfway, which will be at the end of this next lap in terms of this race. So I'm expecting to start seeing a few more pit stops.
God, it's flying by. I didn't expect us to be at nearly the halfway mark already. Have a look at how hard Dylan Rudd is pushing here now to try and catch back up to Brady Myers. I think he sensed by now that Myers has taken off the shackles and is ready to go racing, try and put some distance between them. Rehan Leonage is still right there too. Keep an eye here as well on Kurt Stenberg. Looks like this is one of the fishy cars that he was passing here. There was Blake Delaney up the inside of turn 7. Does Stenny make it out of the corner? He does. Fantastic stuff. That's how you make a pass at turn 7.
Yeah, successful Stenny check-in achieved for the night too, so.
Yes, indeed. We have to tick off that box. Coxhead gaining another position meanwhile, as it looks like that's Taliancic that's come into the lane in his first proper outing for Synergy Sim Racing. Kurt Stenberg pitted 3 laps ago. Taliancic is going to have the tyre advantage for the time being, but Stenny is a very tough customer and he will fight to the very end. Stenny and Tally usually race in the same area of the V8SCOPS field as well, so they'll be very familiar with each other.
Yep, good opportunity to compare how these two are sort of working at the moment in their respective machinery as well. And, this will be a really, really interesting battle to keep an eye on as it goes late. Stenny's actually making some worth out of those tyres. A couple of drivers that are quicker than him. How's the pace, though, from Thomas Hins? And I think it'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on as we're seeing the battle between Dyke, Kale and Chastanoff as well.
Yeah, Jamie Dyke, 3 laps out of the pits now. Chastanoff and Kale pitting 1.5 laps ago, and it seems like Dyke just got swamped by them coming out of turn 6. Meanwhile, big moves from Ewan Baker and Brenton Hobson, the 2 Synergy machines here. 1 Mustang, 1 Commodore, making their way into the lane. How is this going to work for them? They're joined in the pits by Brady Baldwin and Thomas Hins.
I was just going to say about Hinsey, think back about 8 days ago, just celebrated an IndyCar championship, so he's on top of the world.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He'll be carrying that momentum forward very nicely, and he's in a good position in the field right now. V8SCOPS is competitive to the point that, hey, if you get a top 20, that for some drivers, that's as good as a win. That's how close, competitive, and hard racing this field is.
Oh.
And, look at that! Hobson and Baker switching positions as Tally arrives on the scene on tyres that have just come up to temperature.
Yeah, this will be a really, really interesting one. So Hobbo gets that done, gets out the head of all of these guys as well. But this pit stop cycle's worked out for a number of drivers. Jake Maloney's still hanging out there on those tyres. Remember I said I thought he'd undercut? Well, think back. What did Trans-Tasman Racing do in terms of things? They tend to go for the overcut as well. Another interesting sort of trend as well back up towards the front end of the field is Myers is starting to struggle on those tyres. So whilst he might have been preserving them, he maybe pushed a little bit in that middle end of the stint. Now the car's going away from him again. It's come to Dylan Rudd. Oh, and Rayan Leonage has gone for a pit stop.
Okay, so the first of our true front runners here to go for the lane. Rayhan Leonage for Phoenix Racing Team. Robbie Gibbs will jump into the lane as well. Now, as these pit stops go on, I've been looking down the field, and I don't know if this is a glitch on my timing screen, but I'm seeing 4-second long pit stops for the fishy cars of Jamie Dyke and Blake Delaney. Did they... Kenneth Ladder as well, only a 4-second long pit stop. There are drivers here that aren't taking tyres.
Well, it's about track position. So, when you can get in there, you can get a very short service. Remember that safety car robbed us. I said the pit stops are going to be quite short. I said, look, it's going to be tight in terms of tyres. I didn't expect it to be this beneficial. 5 seconds. The problem you've got right now is in terms of things, Jamie Dyke's 9/10 of a second a lap slower. That takes 5 laps for you to fall off that amount of time. So taking tyres at the back end of the race is going to be significantly quicker. But if you can grab a little bit of track position and hang on to it, Ken Ladder's a perfect example right now, under pressure, but if he can hold off Coxhead, he's in good position. He's just not able to.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we will see as Coxhead makes the move on Latter. Fresh tyres for sure on the Team Jinx Shifters car, as Warboys and Ross are the next 2 drivers to come into the lane from 5th and 6th. And look at how close they are on the entry.
That actually really surprises me. I would have expected, as soon as Rayhan Leonage pit, you sort of got to go the next lap. What they're looking for now is that tyre overcut. They're really looking for their opposition to have their tyres start to fall away. If you look in terms of where the lap times are and the fall off at the moment, track temp's about 39 degrees Celsius, a little bit of a warmer track, not a stonking hot track, but it is still a warmer track. It's higher than average in terms of your track range, overall temperature. But Leonage pulled the trigger on that pit stop. By the way, Warboys, no tyres. Comes out ahead of Leonage. He's in a great spot. So this is probably saying, for those guys that have stayed out, what they're looking for now is they're reading what are their opposition doing. Leonage took tyres. That means he's going to lose track position. If he gets free air, which he didn't get because of Warboys, Leonage gets this pass done right now. Everyone else has got to take tyres.
Yeah, indeed. This is the big moment here. Can Leonage make his way past Blake Warboys? One lap undercut, and look at the run he's got coming into turn 7. Warboys defensive on the inside. This is one of the corners where you definitely don't want to go side by side if you can avoid it, and Leonage has to wait a few more corners as into the pits comes our leader, James Scott. His teammate Dylan Rudd joins him. Brady Myers is going to stay out here as Leonage continues to pile the pressure on Warboys.
Myers confirmed. My money now for Brady Myers, he'll come next lap, no tyres. That's what I'm betting him on.
Yeah. Oh, God, it'd be a great feat for him to hold on to the end with no tyres. That would certainly be fantastic. Look at this run here from Rayan Leonage, almost hitting the inside barrier, and he has to back out of it into turn 1 as the pit stop is complete here for Lobs Esports. And wow, yeah, that undercut is massive.
So it was about a second a lap in terms of the difference. Now, he lost probably 0.6 of a second. He should get this done here from Rayan Leonage. He's got to get this done here for Rayan Leonage. He does get down the inside. Just a little bit of trading paint. How good is motorcar racing?
I love this. Here comes Dylan Rudd as well. Can he sneak up the inside of Leonage? Warboys punching a hole on the inside of the corner for him, and Leonage almost gets into the wall. Dylan Rudd now on the outside of turn 6 will put the power down here. Straighter exit, wider line. Usually works out for you there. Leonage was squeezed to the inside. He had to give up some momentum. So now he has failed in passing Warboys, and he's even gotten past for his troubles.
Wow, what an exchange. And all this has happened, so you take Blake Warboys out of this equation, Leonage has got this spot, and he would be about 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds down the road right now. That's a lot for Dylan Rudd to go and achieve. But just because you slotted Blake Warboys in the middle there, all of a sudden, significantly easier. You need clear air. Great strategy call from Warboys. Can he hang on to it? The other coin is that Zach Rattray White took no tyres. He's popped out in 3rd spot. Myers continues. Myers, no chance. He is not taking tyres. The other thing to think about, James Scott did. So Myers has not taken tyres. For me, I need to see Myers pit right now. Oh, as this one goes on. And the reason for that, he has to slot ahead of James Scott. You give him a couple of laps, Scott will eclipse him on the tyres.
Well, here's chance for redemption for Rayan Leonage. He almost tried to box in Dylan Rudd there. And Rudd, interestingly, not going for any kind of move on Warboys here, just riding his bumper on the way into the corners. Look at the move. Rayan Leonage, he's working out really nicely at the moment. He may have lost that position. He may have a bit more space between himself and Blake Warboys, but he's got another chance here. Warboys proved a tough customer with Leonage, and he's doing the same with Dylan Rudd.
So what I've learned is Blake Warboy's really, really good on the tyres. The other one, Chris Cox said, pops himself inside the top 10. When he pit, I think he was, 17th, 18th? So he's +9. Oh, great move.
Oh, up the inside he goes. Warboys, no chance to cut back under. And Leonage almost found space there too, but didn't quite work out for him. So Leonage versus Warboys, take 2, as we get a replay on the bottom thanks to our friends at Suit Speed for Robbie Gibbs. Looks like that's Latter that he's made his way past in turn 3, but too deep into the barrier.
Yeah, hard luck for Robbie Gibbs, and that's a lot of damage to that car, to that left front tyre. So, I don't know, it's going to be really, really difficult. The problem I've now got is that Jordan Ross is starting to creep into this picture. Where does Myers pop out?
Oh, just behind. James Scott retakes the lead of the race, and you're right, Myers didn't take tyres in that stop. Only 4 seconds in the box for the number 2. There's a bit less of a gap now between them, but with James Scott on fresh tyres, he'll be able to use that to just streak away now.
Well, see, the interesting thing is, remember how I said he waited? And he shouldn't have waited? If he'd have come 1 lap earlier, he would have popped out right in James Scott's way. And then, look at what Warboys has done, because he popped out in a really, really awkward spot for Rayan Leonage. Leonage will learn from that for sure. But now this throws the question out there. I think this actually makes things better for race 2, because now, what do you do in the second race?
Yeah, exactly. There's a few drivers who have thrown out that gamble of not taking tyres in the pit stop. And, yeah, Is it going to be the right decision to go for it again in race 2? Here comes Leonage up the inside. Has he gone too deep? He has, and Warboys gets involved too. Jordan Ross takes advantage and flows on through. Leonage heavily damaged. Disaster for the number 79. Oh, look at the disappointment on his face.
Oh, and that's one of those moments that you just sit there and you go, he qualified so well, did all the right things, triggered the undercut, got out ahead of Dylan Rudd. If you take Blake Warboys out of that situation, I reckon Leonage might have nicked second spot off of Brady Myers with the tyre advantage he had.
Oh, that's heartbreaking, honestly. I mean, it's driving so well, and his race is going to come to an end in the wall. He's requested a tow from race control. I don't know if we're at the point now where we'll see another safety car, but yeah, he was just too deep in turn 7. Warboys couldn't really do much to avoid running into him, and it was just a heavy hit.
Yeah, that's of his own are making it. And the other thing is, you, as a race car driver, is you put some pressure on himself, and oh, this is going to get messy.
No. Oh no, Jacob O'Reilly, Brenton Hobson, O'Reilly into the wall. This is a huge pack here for, guess what, 6th spot. Brenton Hobson's in 6th spot. Stop the presses.
That was the wall.
It was. Is he damaged now is the question.
Oh, all of a sudden, do you get Sydney street circuit vibes? Do you get Homebush vibes?
Yep, they're all in the fence. This is crazy. And Warboys stands a chance of gaining these spots back if something else happens to Brenton Hobson or, God forbid, Chris Coxhead, who's had a magnificent drive up to 7th place.
And for Warboys, think about the difference as well for him. So Hobbo gets out here. Oh, there's dust, there's a whack, but I tell you what, where he's hit the wall, it's halfway along the car. There's no panels there. There's nothing he can bend. So if you're going to whack the wall, that's where you whack it.
Yeah, exactly. That wouldn't have hurt the car all that much. Warboys, though, will have a bit of damage from running into Leonage after that unfortunate botched pass. So let's see if he can hold on to it. You see that the WKMP Mustang has its nose smushed a little bit there. That will probably hurt his straight line speed, probably his engine cooling as well. So he needs to be careful here sitting in the draft.
How good's this drive from Chris Coxhead, though, as well? Remember what I said a few laps ago? I think he popped into the pit lane from back deep in the teens, right? So qualifying was okay from Coxhead. Really happy in terms of how his night was gone. And he went, yeah, stuff it. We're going to go for the undercut. Remember, 1 second a lap in terms of that pace in the middle of that stint. He hit 8 laps earlier. That's about 3 seconds down the road in terms of how that's worked out for him. Look at the spots he's gained.
Yeah, and look at the battle for 3rd place as well as Dylan Rudd gets up the inside as Zach Rattray White manages to just hold on to it. Remember, Rattray White's one of the drivers who didn't take tyres in the stop.
There's another car damaged, another car bent. I think it might be Ben Morris.
Oh dear. Ben Morris, where is he? He's, oh man, the Phase 4 car just coming out of turn 3 there. I mean, the livery makes it a bit difficult to tell, but I think, yeah, I do see some damage to the rear end there. I'm not too sure. Well, we've just heard something from Jay, and it looks like this is Thomas Freeman running into the back of him, coming into the braking zone. Oh my God.
Well, I mean, that's a car that's not on the lead lap, running into a lead lap car. So that's not a good look at all.
Not ideal. Race control will be looking at that one. But we still have some of the race left to run here, and there's battles everywhere you look. The top 3, well, they've checked out. Zach Rattray White trying to hold on to 4th place versus Jordan Ross. Brady Myers holding on nicely here. Look at the gaps that Dylan Rudd is making up. Over a second a lap, the last 2 laps running. And the distance between them at the moment, about 2 seconds, 1.5 seconds.
Well, somebody get me the striking distance. It's going to be next lap is effectively what that F1 graphic it'd show if we had access to that one. I tell you what, he's going to be on him, and he's going to be on him with a head of steam. But again, think back. Look at the difficulties that Leonage had with getting past Rudd. This isn't just going to be an arrive on the scene and just go straight by him for Dylan Rudd. He's got some work to do here.
Yeah, a lot of work indeed. Rudd needs to make sure that he still has at least some life left in those tyres. Otherwise, he won't have much of a job to get past Myers, as no further action on the contact between Blake Warboys and Rehan Leonage. I think that's sensible. It looked like a racing incident between them. Leonage just went too deep into turn 7, and Warboys was caught up in it.
Yeah, and not a whole bunch he could have really done there, and difficult racing. I mean, it's tricky, right? We already talked about the difficulties in getting an overtake done here. We're about to see that play out on the screens in just a few moments. This is really, really difficult spot for Brady Myers to be in right now.
1.6 seconds on the last lap. Dylan Rudd is flying right now. Again, not running quite as fast as James Scott is up the front. Scott's still in the 1 minute 29s, but man, Dylan Rudd, 1 minute 30.0 on the last lap. And yeah, I think Myers is in big trouble here now. It's all about the exit, isn't it, from turn 6. This is the opportunity for Rudd to catch up. And if not here, then down into turn 2, turn 3.
Well, how about a couple of really, really interesting points here. Something's just happened to Ewan Baker, by the way, that I get the feeling we're about to have a look at. Yeah, there it is.
Oh dear. Okay, bit of a late decision there to go for the move on Kenneth Latter, and Kenny goes, yeah, all right, thanks, mate. I'll just take that right back.
Okay, so there's a couple of really, really interesting things. We're going to get the opportunity between the two races as well to just sort of break it down a little bit more. But what I want you guys to think about is this is an out-and-out battle. These two guys haven't really been held up all that much by traffic. There's a difficult overtake that's coming this way. But again, if you put Brady Myers and you plonk him out in front of James Scott's got that, right? He was always going to finish second from where he was. He was never going to go out and nick the race lead. He gave himself an opportunity to do that. I think that's going to mess with everyone's strategies. Some drivers have made it work. The fishy drivers are in good spots. I think they're making it work. Blake Warboys, big thumbs up. Making it work. Got unlucky. That's racing, right? You get a little bit of beef, you get a little bit of contact, you get a car in your face. That happens, right? You're inviting disaster when you make these sorts of decisions. But now, we go to race 2. Everyone learns from race 1. Does Warboys all of a sudden go the opposite direction? He's got really, really good long-run pace. He's holding with the cars that are around him on tyres that have done double the laps.
Yeah, Blake Warboys has certainly shown himself to be a tyre whisperer here at Belle Isle. Whether or not it's going to work out for him is another matter entirely, as into turn 7, contact between Dylan Rudd and Brady Myers. The Trans-Tasman car in the wall. Plenty of damage then to the left-hand side. The rear left isn't connected. He's out.
Oh, he's done. Well, he's going to get a white flag here. So this is really, really... Oh, that's so close.
Yeah. So close and yet so far. A problem for Kenneth Latter as well. Looks like potentially a tech issue of some description, or maybe a spin. Latter is falling down the order. And, well, now Jake Maloney, Jacob O'Reilly, Thomas Hinns all involved in a fight as well. I've seen them swap positions like 3 times over the last few seconds. Amazing stuff. This is what happened to Latter, and this too happened at turn 7. Oh dear. Oh no, Ewan Baker gets into him, and Maloney as well.
Well, Maloney's gotten through all the way to there, so he's actually had a reasonable race in terms of things.
Oh my God.
And then it just continues and continues and continues, and then Maloney's into it. Now he's damaged.
Jeez, okay. Keep an eye on Delaney as Brett Loxton moves through, and there's no front on that Trans-Tasman Commodore. Delaney spins coming out of the turn as well. Oh dear, chaos erupting on the final lap of race 1 here at Belle Isle, but we're about to come up to the final few corners here. James Scott looking nigh on unstoppable at the front of this field.
Well, really, really interesting note is that Brady Myers is desperately trying to get back to the start-finish line so he can score, a couple extra points here. He's managed to get out of the second last corner. That's him. Remember, he was second at the start of his last lap. He's now 24th. 24th.
That is amazing how quickly fortunes can change. The final runnings here for Dylan Rudd as James Scott took a fantastic victory up ahead. It's a 1-2 for Lobs Esports. Zach Rattray White, meanwhile, for Vermilion Esports. No tyres, no problem. He managed to get third place over Jordan Ross in the end.
Oh, my word. What a race. What race one. We're going to get to do that all over again. And the tyre strategy. Race 2 becomes even more of a chess match than race 1 was. You know what everyone did in race number 1. And Blake Warboys all of a sudden becomes this just huge wildcard. Could you imagine if he finishes 6th instead of 8th? Just that little bit closer to the front. Dylan Pereira, frustrating night. Rehan Leonage, what a drive from him. And he just barely made one mistake, and boy, didn't he pay for it dearly.
Indeed. Leonage's teammate, Dylan Pereira, seems to be both heavily damaged and potentially out of fuel as well. Looks like that engine's not running.
Good news, I can tell you the starter motor is good enough to get these things around.
Oh, that's good then. Pereira will likely just make it to the finish, maybe, hopefully. The time is ticking down. He's only got 50 seconds to get to the start-finish line. I don't think he's going to make it.
Is he's cranking that starter? No, I think he's just given up now. So
yeah, he's done. So with that, we can go through the results of race 1 here. 12 seconds was the gap in the end. James Scott and Dylan Rudd, Lobs Esports on top once again. Story of the season, really. Zach Rattray White, brilliant battle with Jordan Ross right at the end, but the no-tyre strategy worked out really well for the 117. Hobson finishes 5th. Brilliant job from car number 88, and Blake Warboys overcoming the lack of tyres in the pits and also damage from Rehan Leonage's pass at turn 7. Brilliant 6th spot place for him. Taliancic, Young, Stenberg and Loxton rounding out the top 10. Fantastic improvements from those guys.
Yeah, brilliant strategy. Remember Stenberg went early on that. Coxhead, you said, 11th spot. Phenomenal race from Chris Coxhead. Did a really, really good job. How about Thomas Hinds and Brady Baldwin just outside that top 10 as well? Matt Morris drives through the field to get to 14th. James Chastanoff didn't qualify into this split. Had to race his way in. Difficult night at the office. Fatiguing night at the office. 15th spot. He'll be happy with that one. Aiden Cale, Ewan Baker, Justin Wallace, Blake Delaney home in 19th, and Jamie Dyke in 20th.
21st in the end, Ben Morris and Jake Maloney was the and Dylan Pereira, the last cars to be classified on the lead lap. Brady Myers, how would you be in his position? The move from Dylan Rudd, putting him into the wall at turn 7. He was 2nd at the time, has to settle for 22nd. Yeah, it looks like Pereira's been put in behind... sorry, my apologies, getting my names mixed up. Blackburn in 25th place ahead of Jake O'Reilly. Latter and Stovall 2 laps down, and then we get into retirement territory. Rehan Leonage not making it to the end of the race. Thomas Freeman made it back out on track, but with a lot of time lost. And Robbie Gibbs, Logan Barnett, Brenton Nitschke, Luke Rosella, and Dylan O'Shea were not able to make it to the end of the race, all out quite early. I'm looking forward to seeing what Rosella and O'Shea can do from the very back of the grid.
We've got a bit of a replay to go on board and have a look at something back here, and it's actually going to be Dylan Rudd that we're actually going to get an opportunity to have a look at instead of Brady Myers. This will be really, really interesting. So remember, Myers on ailing tyres at this point in time, and Dylan Rudd's like, I want to win one here. I want to finish 2nd here. This puts me on the front row. This is a really big advancement. And there was a late move. At the turn-in point, he's far enough up. But the problem is, does he leave racing room to the outside? That is a difficult decision because you've got to break that down and have a look at the trajectories of the cars and where they would have ended up when they did make contact. Was there going to be sufficient racing room left? If no, on Rudd. If yes, then it's on Myers. That's how that one will come down.
And, well, we'll see how race control works that one out because, yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to be in a position to figure out a penalty, if any, for that. As we get news of the racing incident for contact between that's Ewan Baker and Kenneth Latter, we'll go to a quick break here on SimSpeed TV. 2 minutes left in warm-up, just enough time for us to get reset for race 2 here at Belle Isle.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series in officially licensed cars engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Well, ladies and gents, there's a little bit more that's come out of the last race as we're having a little bit of a look here. And Freeman, this is the incident between Freeman and Ben Morris, and there was more to that story. Remember when I said it didn't look like a good look? Normally what happens in those instances in a lot of cases is something else that's going on, right? There's a little bit more that we don't see, and it's the application of the brake lights. Generally in sim racing, that quick flash of the brake lights is, hey, go around me. Freeman was just a touch too close, though, for that to sort of be red, and it gets into them. So you can take what you want out of that. My issue with it still, Reese, and it'll still remain, is Freeman's just out there logging laps.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a brake check. Absolutely, there's a brake check. It's the symbol, though, of go to my inside, get down the inside, please overtake me. I've got damage. I'm not racing anyone. Why are those two guys doing that on the track is my biggest question.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I suppose you can lose sight of the bigger picture when you're trying to deal with your own issues, but we'll leave that behind for the time being and go through the grid for race 2. That's exactly how they finished in race 1. Front row lockout for Lobs Esports, Dylan Rudd and James Scott. They've got it all to play for here today. Zach Rattray White will bring Jordan Ross along with him on the second row of the grid, with Brenton Hobson rounding out the top 5 alongside Blake Warboys. And Warboys, well, he was one of the drivers to throw out the no-tyre strategy. Let's see if he does the same thing this race. Taliancic and Young 7th and 8th, with the top 10 rounded out by Kurt Stenberg and Brett Loxton. Night's already gone well for those two, and they can advance further from here.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? Set yourself up for success out of this one. Coxhead and Thomas Hins off 11th and 12th looking to move their way forward, and they did so in race number 1. Brady Baldwin and Matt Morris off of the 7th row of the grid. Will one of these guys be the trigger on that stop without any tyres? We'll have to keep an eye on that one. James Chastanoff and Aidan Cale, they managed to progress their way throughout the field. Both of these guys, 27th and 19th last race, have moved themselves forward. Ewan Baker from Justin Wallace on the next row in behind these guys. And rounding out your top 20, Justin Wallace from Blake Delaney.
Indeed. Starting out at 21st is going to be Ben Morris with Jake Maloney alongside him. The last to first challenge didn't quite go as well as it could have for championship second place coming into this round. Pereira and Myers 23rd and 24th. Keep an eye out for Myers. He'll be on a red hot charge in this one. Blackburn and O'Reilly 25th and 26th. Kenneth Latter and Jamie Stovold will share the 14th row of the grid, and Rayan Leonage and Thomas Freeman will round out the top 30. Goodness gracious, that's going to be another driver I'll be keeping an eye out for, is Rayan Leonage. Robbie Gibbs and Logan Barnett, the ERT duo, 31st and 32nd, and then for some reason, the safety cars classified ahead of Brenton Nitschke, Luke Rosella, and Dylan O'Shea. The safety car did more laps than them, so technically classified ahead in terms of position. Well, Lots of drivers in this field, Scott, looking to make advances. A poor race one could result in a great race two, but they have to play their cards correctly.
Yeah, absolutely it can, but, you know, some of those drivers have been on the improve, some of them are on the going backwards in terms of things. What the big keys to take away, there's a lot of incidents that happened in those last few laps. Race control didn't have the time to get to them. So there are some post-race investigations that have to happen. But what it's about now is everything that wasn't finalised during that first race, pull it to the side after the race.
Yep, race begins now. All little jerk forward for James Scott, putting it in gear as the revs rise and drop, and we are away. Good start from James Scott. And we are off into turn one. Brilliant start from Zach Rattray White. Gets second place off Dylan Rudd coming through the first corner. Rudd will try to fight back though. Rattray White defensive. Almost contact between the two of them. Rudd can't pick the line.
Yeah, now Dylan Rudd's going to try and get himself back in. Remember, he's already sat third, finished second. How's he going to... Oh, cars at the barrier. Just got away with it.
Yep, only just. Bit of a cleaner run through turns 3 and 4 as things stand. But Dylan Rudd has got a slowdown. I think he cut the inside of turn 3 or 4 there, and he's put himself all the way back in the pack now, side by side with Blake Warboys for P5. Warboys will have the inside for turn 7. How aggressive does the number 63 want to be?
Well, it's the big thing. Because if you have a look at Blake Warboys, Rayan Leonard's treated him with the utmost respect. A lot of clean driving. But for Dylan Rudd, couple of little unforced errors. These start to chalk up. You'll lose a tennis match.
Yeah, well, Warboys secures the position for the time being as they go through turn 11, the tightest, slowest corner on the whole circuit. And Jake Maloney in the TTR Mustang trying to make moves up here. He's already up 6 spots on the first lap here, securing the place over Justin Wallace. 16th place so far for Maloney.
Had a little bit of a look a little bit further back, Reese, as well. Another driver who massively aggressively. I actually rode on board with Dylan O'Shea for the bulk of his first lap. He was just overtaking cars like they were standing still. Cars would be checking up for something that was happening a little bit ahead of them, and Dylan O'Shea's like, yep, thanks for the hole. Thanks for the hole. I'm coming through.
Oh, dear. Brady Baldwin on the exit of turn 2 there in the background. That was a bit ridiculous there. Just got crossed up over the crest and will have to give up the position to Brady Myers, who now makes it 5 spots up, trying to recover from his disastrous end to race 1. And all the way back in the pack too, Luke Rosella in the number 55. Replay here of Jake O'Reilly for Vermilion. Let's see how things went for him in the first couple of turns. So Pereira on the outside there, and whoop, all right. What happened to him there? Did he get turned?
Maybe got caught on the curb and the grass at the same time on the inside. I'm thinking it just rotated, got out from underneath him. So, but how about the start? For there's a number of Synergy Sim Racing drivers got themselves in a really good positions. And Brenton Hobson on the podium. That's never happened before.
No, absolutely not. Hobbo up to P3, and that was done on his teammate Jordan Ross. Coming through the left-handers. It seems Ross got a bit of a poor run on the exit. We'll get another replay of the start here, and Altman looks like he was turned ultimately by Kenneth Latter, though certainly the curb and grass wouldn't have helped for Jake O'Reilly. But here we go, take 2. Oh, wow, Blake Warboys giving no quarter in this battle with Dylan Rudd.
Yeah, and I don't think he'll yield. And the big thing for Blake Warboys, finished 6th, he's up to 5th. Now he's covering. Dylan Rudd had a dive at him at turn 3 last lap. Defensive move.
Oh, I love this. Oh, here we go, over under. Here comes Dylan Rudd. But you can hold the outside round turn 4. Can Warboys get it done? Feed on the power. Contact again. These guys are not giving each other any room here, or just enough to get away without a crash, but those little bits of damage, those dings and dents in the cars add up.
Yeah, they do. They absolutely do. And again, what you're seeing from Dylan Rudd is he just can't get the move done. He's quick. He's got the pace. He did get it done on Blake Warboys in the last race, but that was with a tyre offset. This time they're on the same rubber, so that's going to change things significantly. And now he's beaten. Now he's exchanging paint, so he's already eking away at the give and take that's on offer here. He's stuck the nose down there a couple times and tried to check Blake Warboys up, but remember, Warboys strong on long run pace. If he can drive his way to Jordan Ross and doesn't take tyres on this next stop, the margin, if we go green the whole way, only about 2 seconds. Split the margin that we would have added. Remember how they were 4-second pit stops? There's probably another 2 to 3 seconds. The pit stop will be longer with no safety car.
Yeah, that seems like those numbers check out. Oh, Blake Delaney and Robbie Gibbs are the first takers to pit lane, though, from in the lower midfield. This will be interesting to see how this works out for them. It's been a pretty clean start so far. We've managed to make it 4 laps in without a safety car for the time being. Up the inside, Matt Morris getting it done on Jake Maloney here. I think that might actually be a defense. Maloney up, trying to make it up 9 positions here, just feeding it. Oh, there was barely enough room, and Morris is not giving it up easily.
Oh, I thought he had it. I thought he had it at the left hand, and now he's on the outside, and that road runs out real quick.
Oh, certainly does, and it looks like Morris actually nailed the exit there. I thought Maloney would have gotten a better run, but apparently not.
Well, if you're going to take tyres in this race, you want to jump on the undercut. Now, remember, we're just talking about strategy. It's a little bit different.
Oh, nice move.
Oh, it's not done. It's not done. He landed on him.
Goodness me, Matt Morris. He's like, yeah, all right, you're second in the championship, mate. I don't care. I'll race you as hard as anyone.
How good is street circuit racing, Reese? How good is this? Oh, no!
Oh, man. Okay, I think you just cursed the whole field there, Scott. Brady Baldwin and Dylan Pereira stopped at turn 11. Looks like they had a coming together.
Yeah, and it's been noted, and they're going to have a look at it as well. So, yeah, now have a think a little bit about the strategy this time. Now you can see it, right? Guys are losing time in this pack. Everyone's getting checked up because somebody recognises got a little bit more pace at this point in time. The guys that are at the rear end of the field, send them to the lane. Why? They're out of position. They have pace, and they won't fall off as hard, which means they'll be able to maintain at the back end of stints. For Jake Maloney, things are a little bit different. Maybe wants to run it a little bit deeper into this race. I reckon about lap 7 is probably the optimal range to go for an undercut. That's the earliest you can probably come. And the other thing, like I said, if you're looking in terms of taking tyres versus not taking tyres, last time it was about 4 seconds stopped, 4 to 4.5 seconds stopped for no tyres. This time you're going to be looking for about 6 to 7.5 seconds. Tyres, 9 seconds, only a gain of 2 seconds. Keep that at the back of your mind. You see a safety car, good luck.
Well, that's what happened to Brady Baldwin there, unfortunately, getting into a couple of cars ahead of him and then getting spun for his troubles. So, James Scott, all on his lonesome at the front of the field. He has a lead of 3.7 seconds over Zach Rattray White, who is now having to hold off the charging Synergy pair of Brenton Hobson and Jordan Ross. Synergy's pace has been magnificent in this second race. Things have gone very well for them so far, and I think that might have something to do with the track temperature. It's gone down a couple more degrees. It's at 34 Celsius right now. So you never know. That might work out well for Warboys as well, who, as we've mentioned multiple times, already very strong on long tyre runs at this place. If he can keep those temperatures down, he's on for another good one. But he's got massive pressure from Dylan Rudd.
Massive pressure and a few dents around the car from Dylan Rudd as well. So it's not just one, it's the other as well. Changes the balance though. There's a little bit different this time. As soon as you drop that tractor temperature by about 5 degrees, it actually changes how the car handles. Oh no, that's Blake Delaney in the fence. He'll have to come to the lane.
Oh yeah, look at the damage he's got. That front left is destroyed.
So the temperature changes the balance of this just a little bit as it currently stands, because if you've got a little bit less oh, here we go.
Yep, can he get it done? Can Dylan Rudd? 5th place is his. Makes it work beautifully.
Now, does this change things from Blake Warboys? Does he strap tyres on in this race? I don't necessarily think that he does. What I think he might start to do, though, is use him for a little bit of fuel saving, because if you can fuel save during this run, that does bring that pit stop down. You do net a gain.
Indeed. Oh, that's what happened to Delaney. Goodness gracious. Just overshot the braking zone. That double right at the end of the lap, so hard to get right. There's practically no runoff to speak of. And if you don't nail it, then the wall will nail you. So lap 4, turn 11, that's the issue that Brady Baldwin suffered from. Contact netcode, race control decided. Everyone was very close together at that stage. As pit lane comes alive again for a moment, Matt Morris making his way into the pits. Morris showing himself to be one of the more spectacularly aggressive drivers today in his fighting with Jake Maloney. Of the cars that have come into the pits, I see only Tyler Blackburn has decided to go for no tyres. Blackburn currently sits in 29th place with a 6.4 second pit stop, but Coxhead is still leading the cars that have already visited pit lane.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting one. So apparently Brenton Hobson does actually have a podium. It's just not been for a while. Okay, so I thought people were telling me he's Mr. Sixth Place. He is Mr. Sixth Place, finishes in sixth significantly more often. Here's an opportunity for him not just to finish third place, but look at the pace in that car at the moment. Hobbo's actually quicker than Zach Rattray White. I wonder whether or not he might pull the undercut himself. And what do these guys now do in terms of strategy? Because they weren't next to each other on the road last race.
Yeah, exactly. This is a whole new world that Brenton Hobson and Zach Rattray White now inhabit. Do either of them go for the pits on this lap? No, they don't. They're deciding to stay out a little bit longer. Oh, man. I think Hobbo's definitely got the edge, though. You see how much he's dropped Jordan Ross? Ross is now starting to fall back into the clutches of Rudd and Warboys.
Yeah, he is, and well, I think that was just an honest. Jordan Ross looked at it and just went, "I can't hack this, man. I'm just going to give it to you. You've got an opportunity to go and nick a podium here tonight, and not just nick third place, potentially nick second as well." Keep that eye though on Blake Warboys. You mentioned a really, really good opportunity for him. Needs to save some fuel. That'll be a critical part of this race strategy as well. Brady Myers, remember? All the drama that happened at the back end of the previous race, 24th on the grid, now sits 12th.
Yeah, Myers has executed the first part of this race very nicely, and seems like he's got clear air ahead of them, and Jake Maloney supporting him from behind. Remains to be seen whether or not Myers will give Maloney the position for championship points. Of course, we're still nowhere near the point of the season where drop rounds are going to start becoming relevant. So, giving up a couple of points here or there, probably not the end of the world, but it could make all the difference. You still have to think about that.
Yeah, and for Jake Maloney, I mean, he's having fun tonight, isn't he? So, Different had a really, really strong race. That battle was supreme. That'll go down in history as probably one of my favourite battles, that one from Winton, because it was right on the edge. It was just really good racecraft racing from everyone that was actually involved. Now he wants something a little bit different. He says, look, I want to be challenged, right? I want to go out there. I want to overtake some cars. I want to practice my overtaking at one of the difficult circuits to do that. That says a driver, I'm having fun on the sim at the moment, enjoying my driving, but I just want that little bit of extra challenge. So something different for Jake here tonight. Second in the championship. No one ever seems to talk about second, but for him, he's having a phenomenal run. I think the difficulty is you look at James Scott and you go, who's capable of actually beating him?
Yeah, James Scott seems the most put together of every driver in V8SCOPS in 2024. Everyone else, there's been flashes of brilliance and consistent running, but they just haven't been able to get the whole package zipped up like James Scott has. Currently, his lead up to 5.3 seconds. He's just motoring away at the front of this field, and he could potentially do whatever he likes in terms of strategy. Someone who's not going to be able to do whatever he likes is Jordan Ross, because here comes Dylan Rudd barging up the inside at turn 7, and oh no, into the wall goes Dylan Rudd.
Oh, that was a difficult one. He's straight on the mic to request a tow as well. I think his engine's actually gone pop.
Yeah, it looks like the engine's dead in that car. He is not moving.
Safety car for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely, has to. He's on the racing line. Oh, this is going to be awkward. Oh dear.
Well, now he's more on the racing line. That's even worse than where he was before.
Yeah, safety car has to be called by now. Everyone's having to compromise their line out of this corner here to try and get their way through. They're all being compromised. And look at that. Look at the response from Brenton Hobson. Brilliant stuff from Synergy. They've taken advantage of this incident. They know what the deal is. The same goes for Hinz, O'Shea, Dyke, and Latter. And the safety car has officially been called. And, well, what is this going to do for our top 9 who weren't able to get to the pits in time?
Well, okay, so there's a couple of really interesting things that now happen. Remember how we talked about that safety car window and it shrinks the fuel? But if you're going to have a safety car restart, and we've done 10 laps on these tyres, racing laps on these tyres is the replay from this one.
Yeah, so right up the inside of Ross, and then Ross tried to cut back across, but there just wasn't enough space. And I get the feeling that one's going to be on Jordan there.
Yeah, I think it will be as well. There's a couple of really interesting things that now happen as a result of this. Well, that pit window. Now, if people hadn't have pit prior to this window, as it happened in the first race, you couldn't pit, right? If you did pit, all you did was shorten the amount of fuel that you actually had to add to the car. That's all you were doing with that one. This is very different. Safety car restart. What do you want on a safety car restart? You want fresh rubber. If you don't bolt fresh rubber on, you're going to gain a few positions on the track, but then you're going to be vulnerable. And Rattray White's vulnerable already.
He is, as we get the view from behind. And yeah, Ross just came across on Dylan Rudd, put him into the wall, and then put him in the wall again through the next corner. Oh dear, it's not what you want to see. And I'm sure Jordan Ross will be won't be too happy with himself for that one. He's a very honest driver, is Jordan Ross, and you know, Dylan Rudd will be heartbroken as well. Out of the pits comes James Scott, but Brenton Hobson has beat Zach Rattray White in the pit cycle.
Blake Warboy's got a penalty. I think he's spin on the way in.
Oh no! Oh, that's huge drama for Blake Warboys. Speeding on the way into pits, usually if you're taking service, it adds 40 seconds or so to your pit stop time. He's been in there for 34 seconds now. I'd expect a pit stop time of around 50 seconds if all else goes to plan. What do you even say to that? Warboys was doing so well.
Yeah, I mean, so I was actually keeping an eye expressly on his pit lane time. And the reason I wanted to keep an eye on it was because he's going to be the big marker in terms of what does everyone do in the strategy. And then all of a sudden I just saw everyone taking off and I'm like, oh, okay, well, he's taking tyres and nobody else is. Yeah, no, that's a penalty. Hobbo, though, sits second. The big key, though, I think for James Scott is you absolutely take fresh tyres now. Remember how you said very crucially he had a little bit of a margin? He had a margin. And what that means is when you've got a margin is you bolt the fresh rubber on, because then you've got track position, you've got rubber, and you've got everything else in terms of strategy. You've got to have the best, quickest, pointiest car, and you lose no spots. If somebody was right on top of him, that's when you beg the question. I still think they would have taken tyres, but because he had so much of a margin, always taking tyres in that instance. For Hobbo, I think Hobbo's taken tyres as well. I think that's popped out the way it's supposed to be. And then Rattray White slides to third. Well, Jordan Ross, we're going to sit here and say penalties probably incoming for him. So put a line through him. But now have a look at where Taliancic and Chris Coxhead sit. Coxhead sits 5th, started 11th.
Yeah, that's a great run from Chris Coxhead. And remember, he was one of the first drivers to take to the pit lane. I think he was like the second or third driver to come in for the compulsory pit stop under green flag conditions, now 7 laps ago. So yeah, he's going to be in trouble, I think, right at the end. But can Taliancic and Stenberg, as well as Paul Young, who have only just come out of the pits, take advantage, or will Coxhead defend hard? Oh, problem for the other phase 4 Mustang of Ben Morris there. And that's Kenneth Latter trying to make his way around. And that could have been a lot worse. That happened right as Dylan Rudd was stopped on the track in front of them. And race control apparently aren't too happy with Latter and Morris for that one, because they had warned the drivers that there was a car stopped and they were fighting to the end anyway.
Yeah, the difficulty there, though, is that from Ben Morris, he's not attempting to actually go deep there. He's pulled up at a corner, taken a whack to the wall. It's absolutely damaged the left front. And the difficulty that he's got is that... then the next opportunity to test the car. It's right on the racing line, though. It's
Yeah.
right on the racing line. That's the difficulty for Dylan Rudd.
Yeah.
He can't do anything.
No, and I think from Blackburn's perspective, you know, he would have seen Rudd, but once you commit to the brakes, it's really difficult to slow down more than you need to. You could see he was trying to turn a little more to the inside, but I think he just scrubbed the front tires too much and induced understeer.
Yeah, and he's on the brakes quite heavily, and now he's going to sit in the pit lane and try and get as much of that repaired as possible. It's obviously not been a great night. Split 2 went okay, but split 1, there's been nothing in it for him. Boy, we've got a race in our hands. Now, if I have a look in terms of the strategy, everyone inside the top 10 has taken tyres. Guess where Brady Myers has just popped back up? Bottom end of the top 10. Jake Maloney's had a reasonable night at the office, but he passed by his teammate who had to go to the rear for this one. So that says Brady Myers had a lot of speed here tonight. Matt Morris, great opportunity, pops himself inside the top 10, as does Paul Young. Kurt Stenberg started the night, race 1, 20th spot, all the way through to 9th at the end of the last race. That was actually a really, really good race from Stenny. That he's not done yet, though. Into 7th, opportunity to race Michael Talianchi to 6th.
Absolutely. This is going to be a great fight in the middle of the top 10 for sure. And the positions for the last place in the top 10 too. Safety car will be coming in at the end of this lap, and Brenton Hobson stands a chance at getting his first V8SCOPS podium in quite some time. Last time was at Winton in 2022. Dan Stevens pilots the Proven Energy Porsche Mission R back into the pits, and now Brenton Hobson will be keenly looking at the rear of his former teammate James Scott, who puts the power down early, and Hobbo is away as well. Zach Rattray White and Jordan Ross in tow. We are back to racing here at Belle Isle at the halfway point of the race.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting. Hobbo was right up and on Scott's gearbox. He was ready to go racing. But sometimes you just balk yourself a little bit when you're that close. But have a look at the attitude. There is not a car in the top 10 that is now holding back on those tyres. We're past the halfway point. Time for savings over, boys.
Oh, Hobbo locks up! Oh no, just avoids getting into the tyre bundles, but that's a huge loss there for Hobbo.
But now have a look at Stenberg's trying to get to his inside. The attitude from both of those guys. Ross has got a penalty. He's on the podium. Chris Coxhead is effectively on the podium as it stands.
That's amazing stuff from Chris Coxhead. He's had such a quiet race, hasn't he? We can always rely on him to throw something else out there, and he has done that beautifully. Stenny, unsuccessful in getting past Hobson. It looks like Brenton's gone back up to pace. No, he hasn't. He goes deep at turn 7. Yeah, something's very wrong for Brenton Hobson. Oh, what a disaster for the Synergy driver, a V8SCOPS veteran. He was almost guaranteed a podium, and unfortunately the car just not up to scratch. Potentially a problem with his brake pedal. We don't know for sure at this stage.
I wonder whether or not he's bumped a button or there's been a wheel failure of some description for his brake bias slider, and his brake bias slider slid all the way to the front. Remember Lewis Hamilton and Brake Magic?
Yes. I gotta wonder, maybe that's the issue that Hobbo's been contending with. I honestly don't know at this stage though, but it did look like the car had a lot of trouble slowing down.
Another point, somebody just made it. Perhaps he's not able to get the first downshift going, so he's just not able to get the blip going. That would also do it. It'll look very, very similar. To be honest with you, if you had a lot more front brake on, you'd be seeing those pinches. So I said it and I went, nah, I'm not happy. Oh, look at Warboys now.
Blake Warboys making his way up here. That's Brett Loxton that he just pulled the move on. Warboys, of course, trying to recover from the speeding in pits penalty he received when he took his CPS. He's up to 22nd place now, and whether or not he'll be able to advance much further remains to be seen.
Yeah, difficult. Very, very tricky. Let's talk some more about some of the drivers from the rear end of the field. It's going to be Rayhan Leonage as well as another one of those drivers, Dylan O'Shea. Those two are fighting away like you would not believe as it currently stands. Like we said, Stenny started from the rear end in race number 1. Myers has had to drive his way through the field. So many drivers are having one of those, oh, gee, I had one good race kind of nights. But the second race, let's never talk. Oh, no, it's all kicked off.
Oh, no! Oh, dear! Oh, Loxton, Latter, and Baldwin just finding their way through this. Logan Barnett, the Synergy car is Jamie Stovold. That's a very awkward spot for them to come to a stop. Looks like just typical pack racing further back in the field. And turn 11 seems to be a very popular place for the things to explode in those areas.
Yeah, it's all going on at the moment as well. Safety car restart, 12 laps worth of racing effectively, maybe 11 actually, my apologies, 11 laps worth of racing left to go. And Zach Rattray White sits on the podium. This will be a very, very big podium. Think about this in the way that Vermilion Esports is sitting at the current time. This will tell us what happened down at turn 11.
So on board with Stovold, and that's interesting. Yeah, netcode there for the ERT car of Logan Barnett, and unfortunately ending in the barriers. Stovold and Barnett both in the pit lane. Warboys has come back into the pits as well. Rehan Leonage has gotten a lot of damage somewhere along the line. Things are just going off all through the field here. Yeah, so Warboys is meatball, Logan Barnett meatball flag, Jamie Stovold meatball flag. And for Blake Warboys, the meatball was about 3-4 seconds in terms of pit stop. Just enough to say you've got to come to the pits. Yeah, that's a shame. This is Warboy's view of it. Oh, okay. Yeah, so he couldn't find a way through there on Stovold and Barnett, slamming into the barriers. Oh dear, Matt Morris. We've seen him pull off some spectacular moves before, and this time he's with Thomas Hins and Robbie Gibbs as well, watching on from behind. Hinsey tries his best here to get the move done, and he does. Morris gets shuffled wide there. I think he might have clipped the wall.
No, he's still there. He's still there.
Okay, take two then, out of turn 2. Whoa, look at that from Matt Morris. Supreme car control there. I'm amazed he didn't spin that. He is going to potentially lose 1, maybe 2 positions as Dylan O'Shea tries to follow Robbie Gibbs through here. We got Leonage right in the midst of all of this too. And have a look, the number 55 of Luke Rosella is right up there as well. This is a super intense battle, and it's all for 10th spot. Mate, I tell you what, I've always said we need more reverse grid racing. This is about 50% of the cars have actually got a reverse grid here. I want to see all of them reverse grid racing, to be perfectly honest, because look at what they're having to do. Yes, it's tough. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, you've got to try and figure yourself out and get the overtake done. And look at Rehan Leonage, a driver with a lot of talent, but maybe just not the clinical precision that we're looking for. Has to figure out how to get an overtake done. That's how difficult it is. These guys have all got pace. These guys have all really high standard in terms of your racecraft and your drivability. And look at the difficulties in getting these overtakings done. The cream rises to the top in these terms of these situations. You've got to be aggressive, but it's got to be clinical as well. Yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing from James Scott in the lead. The lead is extended now to 3 seconds over Zach Rattray White. But speaking of Rattray White, he has got it all to play for here. Look at that. Jordan Ross only 0.4 of a second behind. And Coxhead, Taliancic and Stenberg, they're sitting there all running in a line. 3 drivers who are very familiar with each other, and I think they all know exactly what the deal is. Hey guys, there's 2 cars in front of us that are battling. Let's catch up to them. Yeah, and you've got to get the head down. You've got to pin the ears back. You've got to be a little bit crafty in terms of how you do that, because you want to have some rubber left when you get there. Think about where Coxhead sits in this thing. Maybe there's a penalty on that car ahead of you. We have not heard whether or not there is a definite penalty for Jordan Ross as it currently stands. There's a big question mark. So for Coxhead's perspective, he wants to know whether or not he's going to go and get this one or not. That's what he's thinking. He wants to know car ahead's got a penalty, car ahead doesn't have a penalty. That's what he's sort of waiting for, because the difficulty there is, do I have to pull the trigger? If he can just sit on... Oh! Oh, wow. Okay. Matt Morris again with a spectacular move here. Oh, no, but he gets turned by Rosella and into the wall. Oh, dear. Man, anywhere Matt Morris is, you're guaranteed some drama and some big action, but that's way too heavily damaged. Loxton runs into him. Ladder has to find his way around. And there's the news. Drive-through penalty for Jordan Ross for the contact with Dylan Rudd. Chris Coxhead is now on the podium. Taliancic and Stenberg will want it.
Yeah, now it's in Chris Cox's shoes, right? Now from Taliancic. Could you think about this? What a comeback story for Michael Taliancic. Founds PSR, works and works and works to get that team to get the forefront of things. Gets some supreme driver combinations. I'm going to stop talking about him, but think about what he's been through over the last couple of years. If you could have told him at the start of the night, how about a Scops podium? Oh man, that guy would be over the moon. He needs it, but he's still got to pull the car up. He's still got to get the job done. 6 laps left at the end of this one, Reese. Anything's still possible.
Yeah, he had a little bit of a problem there coming through turns 3, 4, and 5, didn't he? The staircase section wasn't a fan of Michael Taliancic that time, but he's managed to put another small gap between himself and Stenberg. Stenny wants to be aggressive. He wants a Scops podium as well. I believe he has at least 1 podium to his name. 2, in fact. I've just been corrected. So, yeah. Let's see what the most experienced driver in the field can do in this fight. Start of lap 19. We have 6 laps to go at Belle Isle. No one can catch James Scott. Can Chris Coxhead catch Zach Rattray-White for second? Can Stenny and Taliancic sort themselves out? And don't forget, Brady Myers. Look at him. He's rounding these guys up. Took 5 tenths out of Kurt Stenberg on the last lap.
Well, that's not done yet either. Could you imagine if he drives from the rear of this field to finish on the podium? What a comeback that would be.
Yeah.
Morris has just requested a tow, I think.
Oh, yeah, we already saw him damaged. He just come into the pits and repaired the car, but it looks like he ran deep and, well, looks like the tow request has been approved.
It was out in the runoff, so he was outside the track boundaries and behind 2 sets of tyre barriers already, not impacting the racing in any stretch of the imagination. Clear to tow. Great call. Get this back to us. Now, all right, let's switch on. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of these guys. I don't think they've looked in the rearview mirror yet. Maybe Stenny has, but Coxhead will be thinking about Taliancic. Taliancic will be thinking about the 2 drivers, 1 in front, 1 behind. Nobody's thought about Myers yet. Zach Rattray-White sitting in a great spot. 3rd in the first race. Could this be 2nd in the second race? That would put him in a 2nd in terms of your round standings as well. Phenomenal drive from him. Right, set this up over the next couple of laps. Tally will sit here, watch the way that he drives the car. Stenny's made a few mistakes over the last couple of laps, so he's okay. But then look at this next chasing pack as well. How about this race from Paul Young?
Yeah, Paul Young has done super well, hasn't he? He was one of those drivers that decided to go a bit alternate in race 1 and made up a ton of positions. He started 22nd for the first race and finished 8th. Now he's looking at a 7th spot if he can keep Jake Maloney behind him.
Yeah, phenomenal spot this will be. And Stenberg just closed again on Taliancic. So I think Tally, week off of potentially 2, all week under brakes in turn 3. Those are his 2 big weak spots, somewhere about there. Last quarter of the track, really, really strong. So I'm thinking about turn 11 all the way through to the finish line. That's where he seems strong. Keep an eye on a bunch of these different cars. And Myers is right there, man. He just ripped 3 tenths of a second in the first half of this lap alone out of Stenberg.
Yeah, and interesting to note that Stenberg was the fastest car on track last lap as well. He's right on the attack for Taliancic, ever closer now. Looks like Chris Coxhead has broken free of this battle now. He can try and focus on this finish, get onto the podium if he can. This will be really interesting to see how this all turns out. It's been a breakthrough season for the likes of Zach Rattray-White. Got his first podium at Jerez earlier in the season, a couple of rounds ago, and could be looking at a double podium here at Belle Isle if everything stays together. Taliancic, though, he has got a lot riding on him, actually. You know, he partnered with Andrew Gilliam in the Enduros over the course of many a year, and so we could always count on Tally for a good finish in Enduro season. As far as solo drives go, we didn't always see this kind of performance from him. It's really good to see, but we've still got a bit of the race left to go. Don't want to curse him.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to run on board with Brady Myers right now because I want to have... Oh, steady! Oh, buddy! calm that down. And the reason I say this is watch these gaps and watch where they're strong, watch where they're weak. Remember, Coxhead pit at the end of lap 4 was the very... Oh, now Myers has had a wiggle as well. So the tyres are starting to go. Track temp has just dropped a whole bunch as well. We're down at 31 degrees Celsius. What I'm looking for here... Get myself down in the driver's perspective. Where am I strong? Where am I weak? Stenny has a look. Right, so that tells me Tally is weak under brakes. Right, that's the first thing. That's the first instance I've seen. I recognise the gaps are seeing and soaring. Or Stenberg's just really, really strong under brakes. But then have a look at how the cars rotate through this section. Right here, Myers gets to him. Has a look. The big key is Stenberg looks really strong in straight line brakings. And then they've got a real SSR. I've just got that really balanced car through the longer, sort of bumpier, bouncy corners. So their suspension profile, their dampers really well set up.
Yeah, you can always count on Synergy to put a lot of effort into setting up their cars, especially when the likes of Jared Filsell were with them and James Scott as well. That's when we really saw their setup game rise. Okay. 3 laps to go. So far in Taliancich's career, his best finish was at Montreal 2020, 5th place. He could go one better here today.
And Stenny, no podium since 2020 Sebring, right? Think about that. We have had 4 years since a Stenberg podium. 4 years. And right now, there is about 10 kilometres between finding out who's where, and now Ewan Baker's in the barrier.
Oh, that's awkward. Brenton Hobson just making his way past him, and no, there's no drive.
Fire off.
Yep, left rear tyre's gone. That's going to be a tow request and potentially another safety car right at the end. But do race control want that? They don't want the race to finish under safety car. They might just grant the tow to Baker.
Yeah, I think they're thinking about it. They're trying to get him out of the track as it currently stands. There's a big hole. There's a big hole. He has to tow.
Oh,
has to tow.
And one of the Race on Oz cars as well, apparently finding the runoff area at turn 3 there is hello up the inside for Luke Rosella, passes Robbie Gibbs. Rayhan Leonage says thank you very much, I'll take that as well. Catching up to Dylan O'Shea. Look at the positions these drivers have gained. Gibbs tries on the inside of Leonage. O'Shea is up 26 positions. Luke Rosella up 24, Leonage up 17, Gibbs up 18. Just fantastic stuff as we see the opposite of fantastic for Ewan Baker. Dylan Pereira tried up the inside of him there and just sent him straight into the barrier. Rear drive shaft broken.
Okay, update at the front end of the town. I wonder whether or not Chris Coxhead might be fuel saving a little bit. Remember how he's talking about there might be a little bit tight in terms of that fuel window? He pit at the end of lap 4. So 60% maximum fuel tank. He's going to have to do 20 laps on that tank with one safety car in the middle of that. It was a little bit shorter of a safety car than it was in race number 1. So fuel, he's tight. It's going to be very, very tight. I wonder if he started saving because Tally made a ton of ground on him on the last lap.
Yeah, worth pointing out as well. Pit stops for the likes of Myers and Taliancich, 10.5 seconds. 9.5 seconds stop for Chris Coxhead. He definitely took less fuel at the stop.
Yeah, so he's in a hole, and there's going to be a white flag this time by, but Tally's just a little too far back. He's got to close, and he's got to close on the run to 1. I just don't think he's got the car underneath him to do it.
Well, Ewan Baker had tow permission granted, and he will retire from the race, but I think he'll have completed enough distance to be classified for points. The white flag flies. It's already flown for James Scott quite some time ago. His lead's ballooned out to 5.8 seconds. But the battle for third place is where we're at the moment. Zach Rattray White in the Vermilion Esports car in the foreground. He's under no pressure at all from these guys, but it's a 4-way battle for P3. Chris Coxhead, a veteran of V8 racing in the AusNZ sim racing community. Taliancich has been around the block a few times, so has Stenberg, the most race starts of anyone in V8SCOPS, but he's got Brady Myers for massive pressure. Dylan Pereira getting a post-race drive-through for the contact that put Baker out of the race. Now's the time. You put the power down out of turn 6, and I think at this point Coxhead has enough of a gap to maintain it.
Has he got the fuel? That's just the final check of the box. Has he got enough fuel? And I just wonder, Tally did make a ton of ground on the way into braking, so I wonder whether or not there was a fractional lift just there, just to get him home.
Yeah, just get home. That is the deal for Chris Coxhead. Have a look at the gains that Taliancic is making in this section of the circuit as Stenny and Myers, I think, are just having fun out there now. The two teammates, no team orders at Trans-Tasman Racing either. But for Lobs Esports, it's going to be victory number everything. The perfect finishing record continues for James Scott. Rattray White finishes second, brilliant stuff, and Chris Coxhead gets onto the podium here at Belle Isle. What a drive. Same for Taliancic, he has a new best finish in V8SCOPS.
And the reason I was just a little bit unsure was because Chris Coxhead was right up against the barrier in between 12 and 13. There was nothing there. He's out.
Wow, he pushed that right to the limit, didn't he? He did exactly what he needed to do and was rewarded for his efforts. But James Scott, his perfect finishing record in 2024 continues with yet another victory to add to the tally.
Yeah. Oh. That's a celebration. He's enjoying life. Look, I mean, what a season. Where do you go for these guys? Because they've been dominating absolutely everything as it currently stands. They are the cars to beat. If, you can understand the amount of sponsorship and support that's getting thrown their way at the moment, and they're just having fun, right? They're really relaxed and they sound relaxed. Whereas if you talk to them maybe this time about last year, the stress levels actually went up a few notches. The way that they were talking, little psychological just inflections in the voice, they were just a little bit stressed. They were being pushed to margins. Sometimes you crack under that pressure. Sometimes it just runs away from you. That happened last year for these guys. But you know what? They learned. That motivated these boys. And the Lobs Esports guys, good luck stopping them.
Yep, 24 wins on the board now for James Scott. And that will end his campaign here at Belle Isle. What a fantastic round of racing. We had drama aplenty. We had some great stories come out of this. Plenty of heartbreak as well. Everything that you would want in a sim race here. Big congratulations to all the drivers that managed to make it to the finish and bring us a fantastic finish here on the streets of Detroit. James Scott, 6.7 seconds the gap in the end from Zach Rattray White. Coxhead on the podium, his first solo podium in his career. Mike Taliancic, that's his best solo finish to date, 4th place, beats Montreal 2020, the 5th place he got there. 5th was Kurt Stenberg in the 47, with Brady Myers recovering to 6th spot, Jake Maloney recovering to 7th. 18 and 15 positions gained respectively. Great stuff from those guys. Paul Young holds on to 8th. What a fantastic drive from him too. Remember, qualified 22nd for race 1. Thomas Hinds makes it into the top 10, and Dylan O'Shea with 26 places gained up into the top 10.
Yeah, but it's all about consistency. It's all about putting yourself in the right spot and making sure you get that finish. Luke Rosella does get a good result out of race 2. Will be ruining everything that happened in race 1. Robbie Gibbs, 12th home, reasonable night at the office for him. Rayhan Leonage, man, you got a feel for him after everything that happened in race number 1. Chastanoff, 14th. I think he finished 15th in the first race as well. 15th, 14th, reasonable night for James Chastanoff. Had to race his way in. Dylan Pereira from Brett Loxton. Ken Latta, night he'd rather forget. Brady Boardman will do the same. Showed off a little bit of his dirt drifting skills, flicking cars around. Hobbo sat second. Thought we might finally be chatting to Hobbo after a race. It just wasn't to be. And Ben Morris in 20th at the end of the top 20.
21st was Thomas Freeman. Bit more success than race 1 had for him. And Tyler Blackburn and Blake Warboys will be the last drivers to finish on the lead lap. Got a feel for Blake. 6th place in race 1, and it could have gone a lot better than that for him in race 2, were it not for some on-track dramas and pit lane dramas too. Ewan Baker, 2 laps from the end, had to tow back to the pits. Jamie Dyke, Aidan Kale on the retirements list, along with Justin Wallace, Jordan Ross, Matt Morris, and Jamie Stovold. Logan Barnett was involved in the incident with Stovold there down at turn 11. He joins the retirement list, as well as Dylan Rudd in that contact with Jordan Ross. That was a huge incident, airborne and ending his race in the barrier. Jake O'Reilly, it could have gone a lot better for him as well. 10th place qualifying for race 1, but he just slid backwards from there. And Blake Delaney will be the last driver on our list, with Brenton Nitschke not taking to the start in race 2. Well, the racing is over, but we've still got a bit of talking to do, in particular to our drivers. And who better to talk to first than the man who dominated this round, James Scott for Lobs Esports. New colours on the car for this round, James, and you brought that livery in form and style.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, new colours on the car, and you know, welcomed a few new faces to the team as well since the last round, which is awesome to see. It sucks they couldn't make it tonight for personal reasons, but yeah, no, really was motivated to make sure that we got off on the right foot with the new colours and all that. Yeah.
I remember talking to you last year, and you said you were a big fan of Belle. It seems like the car was set up perfectly for this place. You guys must have put a lot of effort into getting that car to ride the bumps smoothly.
Yeah, the car was really good. Not too much practice, but I think we were just lucky we had a really good baseline set up for these bumpy tracks, and just made some small adjustments, and yeah, luckily went in the right direction, and yeah, the thing was on rails, so couldn't be happier.
Well, we come into Lagos for the next round of the championship. That was one of the places where you first really appeared on my radar as a top competitor in V8SCOPS a couple of years ago. You're looking forward to that as much as we are?
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny track for me, that one. You know, I've been there before and have gone really well, and I've also been there and really struggled, so hopefully it can be a good round for us, but yeah, we'll get our head down. It's been a while since I've done laps there in any car, so yeah, we'll have to you know, relearn all the, not the lines, but you know, the brake markers and where the limits are, so looking forward to it.
It's now 6 from 6 in terms of round wins for you, James. The floor is yours. A couple of new partners on the car, apparently, and this is your chance to thank them.
Yeah, it's great to have the new guys come onto the car. So thanks to Doing Okay and his brand, and you know, obviously Jack as well, and Gianni for getting that sorted. Rako Motorsports, don't forget to head over there and grab some setups. Car was really on rails tonight, so go have a look at that and look at some data, and also hybrid racing simulations as well. Great to have those guys on the car.
Brilliant stuff from James Scott. I really love seeing him work his way around Belle Isle. Next up, Scott Rankin has got Zach Rattray White for a chat. Another podium on the board in 2024.
Hey, Zach, I mean, you know, we're just talking at the top end of the show. Driver with the most starts in terms of SimSpeed broadcast race this season. You cracked a podium in this thing finally. You know, V8, obviously it's very similar to that Merc GT3, but this one, she's got a few more adjustable bars and bits and pieces. Taking yourself some time to get around the car, but you're finding pace, you're finding that success finally.
Yeah, just doing loads of laps, as many laps as I can. The best way to get good in the car is if you do loads of laps. That's why I've been pretty busy across all categories. It just, I don't know, it keeps me busy.
Mate, in terms of things, obviously there's been a little bit up, a little bit of down in terms of the team, but you know that sort of focuses you a little bit this week. It's rough, you know. You've got those partnerships, everything sort of formulates. How do you approach, you know, working through such a tumultuous time?
But stuff happens, I guess. Probably not the word I want to use, but I don't know. Can't just focus on that. We've still got races to come up, so can't just focus on what's happened. So get your laps in, get your practice in, find a way to get around it and move on.
Mate, in terms of things for you as well, I think one of the biggest attributes that we've sort of been talking about with you, particularly over the last 18 months, is you've taken yourself from a little bit of a car specialist and now you're becoming an all-rounder. What do you attribute to that? Is there anything particular that's really allowed for that skill growth to come forward?
I don't know. I'd like to think of myself as someone who's pretty good in everything. my family's pretty rich in motorsport back in NZ, from speedway to road racing, and I'd like to, although it's probably not in the real world, I'd like to think that I'd be pretty good in pretty much anything I step into. But yeah, just the beginning.
Mate, finally, is there anyone you want to thank, anyone you want to say to all those people out there tonight that are watching that and looking at the team as well?
I don't know, I'd like to thank the team at the moment. The way they're handling it's pretty good. And probably just like to thank our sponsors at the moment, Vermilion X Coaching, IMO Setups, Vermilion Motorsports, Verb Designs, and Supernova Motorsports.
Mate, thank you very much for your time. Like I said, I always love seeing you on the podium. Always love chatting to you as well, Zach. It's good to see this, mate. This is such a big result. I'm so happy for you as well.
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it.
Mate, finally, we get to chat as well to Michael Taliancic. Mate, this has just been your last 12, 18 months. It's just been huge. For those that don't know you, there's so much that's happened behind the scenes. You come here, one of the most difficult tracks on the schedule. The walls are up close. The racing's tight. And a typical, I would class this as a typical tally drive. Kept your head when everyone fell to pieces around you.
Yeah, well, I think this new glass car kind of suits me. I'm good at keeping things clean and looking after my tyres and good pace, but I've really got to have a big shout out to the guys at Synergy. They've given me such a relaxed environment. It's letting me drive a lot more comfortably than I have been in the last year or so. So yeah, big thanks to those guys letting me get involved with them, and big shout out to Jordan who helped me get up to pace this week. But yeah, no, it was a fun race. I'm stoked for Chris, who I'm assuming that would be his first podium in Scops. I really wanted to get that third place, but he didn't make a mistake all through the end of the race, and he had a good strategy. But yeah, no, I'm pretty stoked to be racing the way I am right now.
Mate, talk us a little bit through that as well. And just for the stat, it is Chris Coxhead's first solo podium. We were just talking about that as well. There's a couple of, podiums that have gone well, or races have gone well for you as well. But individually, this is now your best performance in Scops. This is a new era for you as a driver. You've got to go back to the drawing board and reinvent yourself. But it's just that freedom. You're driving for yourself and to support others now. You're not driving because you're the lead guy helping to build other people around you. What's that like?
Oh, like I said, it's just a lot more relaxed for me. I'm enjoying it a lot more. I actually didn't put as much practice into this race as I normally do, racing in Scops, but I've got one of the biggest exams of my life coming up in just over a week. My final theory exam to become an electrician, so getting a long way in my apprenticeship there. So my focus has generally been on this. This has been a bit of an escape for me, but before, sim racing wasn't really an escape for me. It was sort of becoming work. So when I stepped away from Pursuit and we merged into Altus and whatnot, it was part of me getting away from that, and it's just gone another step further with me joining Synergy, and I'm really loving where I am right now.
Mate, I think the results are sort of starting to show that, and big change for yourself. Job as well is really benefiting from this partnership at the moment, man. But yeah, look, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying seeing you drive once again, mate. Congratulations. Is there anyone you really want to thank?
Yeah, once again, thanks to all the guys at Synergy for giving me that great environment. They were very generous, letting me join in because I wasn't in the greatest of places when I asked to join. So thank you to them, and big thanks again to Jordan Ross, who was helping me get up to speed on this track. Big shout out to the sponsors, Watercraft Performance Centre, Works Race Components, Dr. Epoxy, DM Cinematography, and the Speedway Shop. And thank you guys. It's been a bit of a journey, and great to have another chat with you guys. Been a long time coming in Scops, so good to be back here.
Mate, congratulations. Pleasure to chat. Man, I'm so pumped up to see that result. Yeah, if there's one guy I wanted to see get a good finish, it's always Tally.
Oh, thanks, appreciate that, mate.
Fantastic stuff from Michael Taliancic this round. Finishes the round in third. Well, that brings our coverage of V8 SCOPS round 6 to a close here tonight. Of course, Scott, round 7, we go to Interlagos on the 14th of July. Really looking forward to this. Interlagos is another track that I think is suited perfectly to V8 racing. It's got overtaking opportunities aplenty, loads of challenging corners. Oh, man, it's going to be a fun time.
Mate, yeah, it is. And I think one of the biggest things that always gets understated is actually the elevation change. You talk about it when you go to Bathurst. This circuit really falls away from you, and then you climb up to finish the lap as well, down through the center S's. It challenges the car to rotate, to move the balance of the weight and where the car sits. You've got tight corners, you've got off-camber corners, you've got uphill and downhill braking zones. In terms of technical tests, there are a few places that test you the way this does. About the only way that this circuit could get any more challenging is if you brought those walls right up next to the racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to see the goings-on, the drama, the fun when the V8 SCOPS Circus comes to Brazil for its next round. Of course, supports will be active on Friday night as well, the V8s and the GTC, and we look forward to bringing you that coverage as well. But for now, we are going to say our goodbyes on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or Kick, whichever streaming platform you've come from. We do appreciate your view, and we hope to see you next time. Big thanks, of course, to the crew at Aussie Online Gaming, as well as our partners such as Proven Energy for helping to bring this race to you. Big thanks to Speed on the replays as well. I'm Reese Gardner, Scott Rankin alongside me in the comms box, Jay Kennedy behind the scenes here on SimSpeed TV. We'll see you next time.